10 seconds to go. The Blues are going to win their second straight game. It's going to be a 4-game point streak. And they're going to improve to 27, 26, and 6. That brings them to 60 points on the year.
We're finding a little consistency in our game. I think we understand what we're capable of when we're doing things the right way. And, the depth that we have and the goaltending we have, we feel like we can compete with anybody. But I think we're just finding a little bit more consistency throughout the lineup. And the guys are playing hard and working hard for one another. And
All right, now you have my attention. Blues win 7-2 last night at home against Seattle. That team's terrible, man. That team's really bad. That's really what I learned last night. But, Alex, I want to talk about the other aspects of the game.
Wild, though, about a month ago, we were saying that about the Blues.
I'm BK. 7-2 win. They now have points in 4 consecutive games. It's only the second time they've been able to do that so far this season. The first time came in the 4 games right after Jim Montgomery was hired as the new head coach. So you get the new coach bump. Beyond that, this is the only time it's happened. Alex, I like the way they're playing right now. They just look different. Since coming out of the break, they outplayed Winnipeg despite the loss. They outplayed Colorado, and then they wiped the floor with Seattle last night. They were just clearly the better team in all 3 games that we have seen thus far. Binnington's been great. The forecheck's been good. They look like a different unit, but it's 3 games. I've been here before where I get excited about the team, and then what do? They let me down. So what am I supposed to make of what we witnessed last night, Alex, with them just absolutely destroying the Seattle Kraken at home?
I mean, they're playing desperation hockey right now, and they're living up to it by how they've been performing, and that's what this is. You exit out of the break, and you realize that there's 5 games until the trade deadline, and then you've got 25 games left to go, and you're still in this race. And so it's kind of like, okay, there's no more messing around. We have to invest in what our coach is saying, and it seems like out of the gate, the Blues have done that. In 3 games, they have just completely dominated the opposition, and this isn't like just 3 Seattle Kraken teams. You took on the Winnipeg Jets, and I know everybody likes to point to, well, they didn't have Connor Hellebuck. That's fine, but the goalie that you went up against for that team also had like a 1.23 goals against average against you, and they had Kyle Connor, who is better known as the Blues Killer.
And Winnipeg's been awesome. It doesn't matter who their goalie is this year. They've been great.
They've won 10 in a row since you played against them, but you were the better team in that game. You just lost. And then the Colorado Avalanche, I don't even think I recognized Nathan McKinnon on the ice for half of that game because the Blues found a way to stifle it. And then you just completely spanked the opponent that you were supposed to. And that was the part that I was questioning, because you typically haven't done that this season. When you've gone up against an inferior opponent, made them look inferior, you did that against the Seattle Kraken. And when I say that they've dominated their opponent, I tweeted this out last night. In their last 4 games where they've picked up points, they have allowed fewer than 6 high-danger scoring chances. Compare that to the previous 3 games. They gave up 25 high-danger scoring chances in 3 games. Now, you want to go to the offensive side of it. Since they've come out of the break, they have scored a total of 13 goals.
Now, most of that last night, but...
Fine, but 13 goals in 3 games. You know how long prior to the Four Nations tournament it took them to score 13 goals?
6?
9 games.
Oh, God.
So, yeah. So, however you want to look at it with this Blues team, they came out of the break and they said, we have to play inspired hockey. Does it last? We're going to about to find out on Thursday, because guess what Thursday is? An opportunity once again to win 3 in a row. It's what has evaded this Blues team all season. But what they did against the Seattle Kraken showed me it's like, all right, they're investing in what Jim Montgomery is telling them is going to be winning hockey, and they're getting the results of it.
Yeah, to me, I said yesterday, I think there's more floor to this game than there is ceiling. Like, the upside really isn't there. Similar games last night between my Missouri Tigers and the St. Louis Blues. Really no upside to winning those games, but a whole hell of a lot of downside. And last night, the Blues found a way to avoid that downside. Last year, it was the opposite. Last year, we got to this point, similar kind of a game where they're starting to build a little momentum, and then boom, comes crashing back down to earth in that Nashville game. And they lose that game, and we knew pretty much at that point, season over. Doug Armstrong has pinpointed that game as being at that point in time, I knew we probably weren't going to be able to make a run. That was the game where he recognized that. It was Columbus and then that Nashville game. Last night could have been that. We could have circled that game about a week from now and said, that's when Army knew. Instead, they get to live to fight another day. And that's where the Blues are at right now. I'm not going crazy over them getting points in 4 straight. It's better to see. I enjoy it. It's a hell of a lot more fun to watch. They're just playing more inspired hockey. But somebody on the text line said, BK, I thought you weren't buying in over 1 game. I'm not. I need to see it again against Washington. Go out there tomorrow night on the road against a really freaking good team, but a team that Calgary just beat, who you're trying to chase down in the wild card race right now. So if they do it, guess what? Means you got to do it as well. You put yourself in such a deep hole. Man, digging yourself out is not going to be easy. You're going to have to probably earn points in 3 of the next 4 games. And honestly, you might need to win each of those 3 games that you get points in. That's where you're at right now. And I mentioned the 4 games because that's all you got left before Doug Armstrong has to make some decisions at this year's NHL Trade Deadline. If you really want to get back into this thing, we said you got to go on a run. You've given yourself the chance to do so. Now it is about taking advantage of what lies ahead, and it ain't going to be easy. That was the gimme. Now you've got Washington, 2 against LA, and 1 on the road against Dallas on Sunday night. T-Bone, what did you take from last night?
Yeah, I viewed it as there's no upside to that win outside of, you're fighting to just get another day for Doug Armstrong to make a decision. Because last night was the game where if you lose that game, that's the one we circled. I mean, that would have been the final nail in the coffin for the St. Louis Blues. It comes down to what they do over the next 4 and what they look like against Washington. Because we've seen this team put together great games like last night in the past, but they've never been able to really build a snowball of momentum, right? It always is, man, they played really well. Oh, they played good for 2 games, and then boom, that third game for that 3-game win streak comes around, and what do we talk about the next day? Typically, it's something along the lines of, hey, they just weren't finishing, or it is, hey, they didn't show up for the first period. So that's what I'll be watching for tomorrow night. But it is a game-by-game basis for the St. Louis Blues. Best case scenario, to me, they end up proving, hey, hold pat, Army. Just keep us together. Let us see if we can figure this out. To me, they're not going to be any kind of buyer. It's even debatable what kind of seller they could be, but they are going on a game-by-game basis.
Yeah, I don't really think it moves the needle at all until you win 3 in a row, and then beyond 3 in a row, I think Doug's going to be very selfish about it and say, you need to show me more. Like, I go back to that year that they traded away Paul Stastny. That team was like 4 points out of a playoff spot, playing some good hockey, and he said, no, I'm not falling for this. And he traded guys away. I don't know if he's going to pull that off because you don't have pending UFAs like Paul Stastny was at the time, but what I can say is this has been 3 straight games that the Blues have come out of the first period as the better team immediately. And I have not seen 3 straight games where they've done that and been the best team out of the first period.
Basically, since he was hired. Jim Montgomery, early on, he did that, and then since then, we haven't seen
even that previous 4-game point streak that they had. Remember the New Jersey Devils game? Yeah. They were the worst team in that game, and they still won, though. So they've done that. They forechecked from start to finish. Like, I cannot take that away from them. They have made the other team exhausted. Like, Colorado comes to mind. In that second period, Colorado just got sick of playing against the Blues. And I haven't seen that. And then the other factor in all of this is your special teams has been clicking for 3 games. It's 100% on the penalty kill since they've come out of the tournament, or since they come out of that tournament break. And the power play, I believe, has scored in 3 straight games as well. So, again, it's only 3. I can't sit here and get excited about it and be like, hey, we're going to go on a run 100%. Now. You got to win 3 in a row before I'm going to actually start to invest in this.
And even then, if they win 3 in a row tomorrow night, cool, you won 3 in a row. That is the starting point of what is necessary. We've said all along, it's going to require like a 6-game winning streak at some point. Right. And the best time to do that is right now. Yeah. Force Doug Armstrong's hand to say, okay, if you guys do this, if you get, let's say it's 11 points out of a 6-game stretch, I can talk myself into why I need to invest in this team. But that's what it's going to take, man. It's a really long stretch of consistent quality hockey, which is not anything that we've seen from this team all year long.
And I know it's the trade deadline season, and that's what we go to immediately, but like bigger picture for this team, like the individuals and how they're performing right now, that gives you optimism of what the rest of this season looks like and beyond. Thomas, Buchnevich, Jake Neighbors finally scored last night. And then defensively, I don't know about you guys, but defensively, this team is starting to really open up my eyes.
Explain that. When you say that they're starting to open up your eyes, what are you seeing that is different than what we have seen from them over the past few years?
I'm seeing them more involved on the offensive side than they ever have been. That's a 3-game point streak for Justin Falk, for Cam Fowler, and Colton Parayko. Philip Broberg last night played 23 minutes because they rested Colton Parayko because they were up so much. He had 6 shot attempts and 2 of them that went on goal. This is going to be one of those Ferrario comments that probably bites me in the ass, but it's just kind of a 10,000-foot view right now. 2 years ago, we were talking about this team being in a bad spot defensively. Like, we had Craig Button. I forgot who we had on that be like, nobody wants to play, or everyone wants to play against this defense. Nobody's afraid to go to the front of the net. This feels as confident as I have felt for a top four, specifically the three best defensemen for your Blues team, since what they had when they went on that Stanley Cup run with Petro, with Bouwmeester, and Colton Parayko. And here's why. Parayko's playing like that alpha dog. Of course, he's not playing like Alex Pietrangelo, but he's playing like an alpha. And if you look at the points that Petro put up that cup season, Parayko's right there with him. Points and plus-minus rating. Cam Fowler has scored the 5th most goals amongst defensemen since he was acquired by the Blues. And on top of it, those two have combined for a plus 21 at even strength goal differential when they've been on the ice, which is the 3rd best pair since December 14th. And then on top of it, Parayko at the time was 26 years old, and people were like, man, look at this guy play as a second-pair defenseman. Are we not saying that about Philip Broberg right now? Again, there were 2 Hall of Famers on that team, and I don't know if there's one Hall of Famer in the group that I just mentioned. But as confident as I was of, like, feeling good where the core was at with the Blues defense when you had Pietrangelo, Bouwmeester, and Colton Parayko as your 3 best defensemen, I'm starting to get that same feeling with a 33-year-old Cam Fowler, a 31-year-old Colton Parayko, and a 23-year-old Philip Broberg.
So people don't love the expected goal stuff, right? I get that, but...
So you're going to bring it up?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and bring it up and use it as my supporting evidence for why my guy Alex Ferrario might be onto something a little bit here. So when you look at Parayko and his top pairing partner over the last few years, you look at who he's been with, right? This year, it's Cam Fowler. They're at 51%. So when they're on the ice, they are expected to score more goals than the opposition effectively. Like, it's a 50-50 proposition, but that's pretty impressive considering the lines that they're generally speaking going up against. When he was with Nick Leddy, Alex, last year, what do you think it was? What was the expected goals rate for the Blues? It's on a percentage basis.
36%.
That's what it was 2 years ago with Nick Leddy.
2 years ago, I would believe that.
Yeah,
Last year, I'll go like 45%.
Pretty close, 44% last year. When he was with Scandella, this is in the 2021-22 season. Now, this was a good team. This was a team that ended up going to the playoffs.
Yeah, but that had Petro still, didn't it?
No, 21-22 is the year that they ended up losing to the Colorado Avalanche in the postseason.
Oh, okay.
This is when our show went out there. We did all of the games together. Bennington gets hurt. Kadri thing. It was a whole mess, but we enjoyed the hell out of it.
Water bottles were thrown.
The top pairing partner for Parayko that year was Marco Scandella. What do you think the expected goals rate was for Scandella?
27%.
Again, they were good.
I'll go 45%.
Yeah, but that pairing wasn't.
44% was their expected goals rate that year as well. So, yeah, you got to go back pretty far for the last time that we saw Parayko in the top pair for the Blues performing like this. In fact, you have to go all the way back to the 2019-2020 season when you had Pietrangelo as a part of the roster. And the guy that you had that year was Petro with Falk. That was their best expected goals rate. But if you're looking for, like, Petro's top partner that year, they were at 41%. The year before that was 2018-19, and for that team, yeah, suddenly you can finally talk about a top pair that was expected to score more often than the opposition. It was done with Pietrangelo.
Yeah, I don't think Parayko and Bouwmeester were a better shutdown defensive pair than what Parayko and Fowler are. But I think Parayko and Fowler are a better all-around defensive pair than what Parayko and Bouwmeester was because of their offensive ability. And that's the thing about this defense, BK. Watching them last night, this isn't defensemen that just stand at the blue line and take slap shots. Parayko's going to the front of the net. Broberg's doing wraparound shots. Like Cam Fowler's going to the goal line. The goals that they're scoring, defensemen are getting involved in the rush. It's a 5-man unit, which they haven't been running 5-man units since I couldn't even tell you when. When there are 5 guys in the offensive zone that are creating that cycling, and Fowler said it best, like your forwards have to be a big part of this for work or to work. There's just something about how this defense is performing and the points that they're putting up, which gives this Blues team at least some belief.
And I do think that the Cam Fowler acquisition is something that we can lean on for the forward groups as well. And the reason why I mention that is because, hey, once you have that top pair, everything else starts to fall into place.
Yep.
Like, all right, now suddenly Broberg is on that second pair defensively, and you feel much better about what you're getting there. What the Blues are missing in their top line right now is that legit number 1 winger. Once you put that player in place, suddenly everything else starts to filter into place. You're like, okay, Jordan Kyrou, second line winger. Yeah, he's producing the way that I would expect an elite second line winger to produce. Dylan Holloway, same thing over there. Okay, Pavel Buchnevich, instead of being the guy on the top line, you're the secondary, like the accent piece on that line. Yeah, your production up there makes sense for being that type of a player. Hey, Jake Neighbors, oh, you're not a top line player anymore. Now you're on the third line with Bolduc or Snuggerud and potentially Dvorsky. Everything else starts to fall into place. What the lesson here is from Cam Fowler, who was on nobody's wish list as the number one or top pair defenseman for the Blues, sometimes it's those less than sexy acquisitions that can help everything else fall into place. So hopefully the Blues are able to find one of those for their forwards.
Can I throw one out there? Because I was waiting for the text that called me a lunatic by saying Parayko and Fowler could be better than Parayko and Bouwmeester all around. I had one in my arsenal ready to go for that one. You know what the plus-minus was for Parayko and Bouwmeester the year they won the Stanley Cup?
I'm going to say minus, like combined or what?
Combined. So even strength goal differential combined that season.
Minus 20.
It was a -2. And you know what it is for Parayko and...
20, they went...
But they were out there a lot defensively, so like
he thought it was a Ferrario game. No, I'll give him credit. He played the game right.
Playoffs, man.
Yes, so.
Hey, he played the game right. He just didn't use common sense when he had the answer. It's fine.
I was like, okay, they're going to take a lot of defensive zone draws, so they're probably going to be on the ice for more goals.
Do you know what Fowler and Parayko are right now since they've been together since December 14th?
Plus 5.
Plus 21. Thanks for listening when I said it earlier.
I thought about plus 20.
It's the third best pairing at even strength goal differential. Again, defensively, nothing's better than what Parayko and Bouwmeester was. That was a shutdown unit. All around, I think this might be better.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. In 15 minutes, we'll get into NFL quick hitters. Don't worry, I'm the only one that uses an even worse stat for people, which is expected goal share when they're on. Or war.
Oh, and war. Oh,
and batting average. What's wrong with you?
If you guys want to check us out on YouTube, you can always do so at youtube.com/101 ESPN STL. We'll certainly be talking plenty of Blues throughout the day today, including a new report from Sportsnet that the Blues are indeed open for business. Can they be this year's version in the NHL of what the Rays were at the Major League Baseball trade deadline last year? We'll get into that coming up in the 12 o'clock hour. But next, we got to talk about the Tigers. Yesterday, they proved that Saturday was a fluke. That loss against Arkansas, it was the outlier performance. This is one of the 5 best offenses in college basketball. We'll discuss what they've done next year on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. So last night, Mizzou put together one hell of a performance. That was ridiculous, man. They got out there, and the first couple of minutes, I was like, okay, they're playing fine. And then Caleb Grill comes on the court as their sixth man. That's his role for them. And he's just in fuego. From the moment that he steps on the court, 2 for 2 from his first couple of 3 attempts, and then has a backdoor cut that he gets to the rim with, and boom, immediately, basically 10 points in the first 3 minutes that he's on the court. Looked fantastic. And Alex, this was basically my main point coming off of the weekend when Mizzou lost to Arkansas, and they didn't look very good in doing so. Turned it over 17 times. Caleb Grill 2 for 12 from 3. They didn't have Josh Gray on the court, so their interior defense really took a step back with that. They just looked like a completely different team than who I had seen most of the year. And I said after that game, okay, if this happens again, especially against South Carolina, who's not very good, then we can start talking about this being a trend down the stretch that you would not want to happen right now, where Mizzou, instead of playing their best when it matters the most, is playing their worst when it matters most. And Caleb Grill had already had a couple of games where shot looked a little bit off and then had that horrible game against Arkansas. Last night proved that was the outlier. Arkansas, the performance that they had on the road at Arkansas was a classic letdown spot. Huge win at home against Alabama on Wednesday. Quick turnaround on the road. Really difficult place to play. Going up against a team that is in desperation mode, clinging to their NCAA tournament lives. And a win in that game probably clinches things for Arkansas if they just take care of business down the stretch. A loss potentially eliminates them. Like, it was that big of a game for Arkansas. And they lose. They played poorly, but last night was a reminder of what this team is capable of. And Alex, right now, you look over on KenPom, which is one of my favorite nerdy stat numbers sites for college basketball. They're 10th in the country, Missouri is right now. If you look at what they're doing offensively, they've got them 6th in the country. And I think you can make a pretty strong case right now, given how they are playing currently. The only offenses that I would take over them are Duke and Auburn. And if you wanted to throw Alabama into the mix, I'm more than willing to do so. Alabama is unbelievable offensively, and Sears is one of the best and most fun players in the country to watch. But beyond that, man, this is one of the top 5 offenses in the sport. And when they are clicking the way that they were last night or the way that they were a week ago against Alabama, I'm not sure if there is anybody other than Duke and Auburn that I would take over them offensively. They are that freaking good, and they have a real chance this year to make it to the Final Four.
You just did triple digits for the second time in 3 games, and you didn't need overtime to do it. Like that
scored 85, I think it is, in 4 straight, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that tells you
5 straight.
That tells you how good this offense is. And one of my favorite basketball analysts is Gary Parrish. I listen to his podcast almost every other day. And the way he talks about Mizzou, I think the quote he had last night or 2 days ago was, I think if I'm another team in the tournament, I'm shaking taking on that Mizzou offense.
They're the team nobody wants to see. Like the 1 seeds, when they release the bracket, Mizzou's not going to want to see Duke or Auburn in their region.
Right.
Those are the 2 teams that if you're the 4 seed, for example, you don't want to have to play them in the Sweet 16 because those teams are ridiculous. The same thing will be said, though. If you're a 1 seed, the team that you don't want on your 4 line that you would potentially have to face in the Sweet 16, you want nothing to do with Mizzou. Mm-hmm. The other teams that are going to be on that 4 line, okay, we can handle them. Mizzou, dude, if they get hot, they can beat anybody. Yeah. Anybody in the country.
And that's what Gary Parrish said. He was like, look, this is a team that when it comes to scouting them, you don't know how to scout them because 1 week, 1 night, they can come out and they could be shooting threes and knocking them down left and right. And he said the next game, you can go out there and have to deal with the guys underneath the basket in the paint. He said this is a dual threat team that can really beat you up. And the offense is the part that gives you the hope of this is a Final Four team. Because if they're going to be shooting like this with Caleb Grill that just can't miss, I don't know how teams are going to be able to defend them. But when the shooting goes quiet, that's when you have to adjust. And their adjustments have worked sometimes. And that Arkansas game, it just didn't work.
Yeah, and listen, this team, if they miss their threes, are going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
They are.
I'd say a lot of basketball teams.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, I know that as an Illinois fan.
Your team exclusively misses them.
Yeah,
though.
But they keep shooting them for some reason.
That's why we keep losing.
Missouri, when they miss their threes, they're not as good of a team, but that's most teams, man. And the nice thing about Mizzou is when one guy's missing, they've typically got another guy that can step up. Oh, off night for Caleb Grill, that's the one thing that can really hurt them. But even when it is, sometimes you end up with Marcus Warwick coming in, and he's going to be a guy that has a big night. Or Tamar Bates suddenly is hitting from 3. Anthony Robinson has looked really good from 3 the last couple of weeks as well. He's really taken his game to another level. Trent Pierce at times has some games where it's like, okay, this is a 6'10" stretch 4 that can step out to the 3 line, and whether he's passing, which he's pretty damn good at, or if he's a guy that's just going to pop and shoot, they've just got a lot. I mean, Jacob Cruz has been amazing. He's shooting like 60% from three over the past 3 weeks. They just have so many different ways that they can beat you offensively. And my favorite part about watching them, Alex, is the way that they move without the ball. Because you'll see teams in college basketball that, man, they shoot a ton of threes, but there's no movement. It's just static. And they're just all, it's 4 out, and they're just kind of passing it back and forth across the perimeter. There's no movement. There's no ball screens. It's just boring and stagnant. And it honestly is what the old offense used to be when they had Konzo Martin as their head coach. Everybody's just standing out on the three-point line, and we're back and forth, back and forth. We'll take the clock down to 6 seconds. Whoever's got the ball, you take the three. And that's it. And if you make it, great. And if you don't, okay, it was a bad possession. Missouri's offense right now, it looks like an NBA offense. And T-Bone, this is something that we were talking about in the office earlier today. When you watch college basketball right now, especially these teams that have the veteran players like a Caleb Grill and a Tamar Bates and Mark Mitchell that have played a ton of college basketball, it's as good as the sport has looked at the highest level in a really long time. Duke is the exception. Their best player is Caleb Flagg, and that guy's amazing. He's a freshman. Cooper Flagg, excuse me. He's amazing. He's a freshman. Auburn's best player is a senior. You look at Missouri right now. Their best player, Caleb Grill, has been in college, I think, for 20 years, roughly.
Smart.
That's an estimation there. T-Bone, what are you seeing that's changed from your experience watching college basketball compared to what it was, 10 years ago when the trend at that point was the one and done?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is these guys, these teams that are having more success, is that they have the guys that are polished, right? They're the ones that they take their lumps early on, but they stick around in school. Now, maybe it's now at the same program, like Caleb Grill's on his 3rd program, but they get to that next school, and then boom, guess what? You've got veteran guys that are there essentially, and they know the right way to play basketball. And I think that's what you're seeing with some of these top teams across the country is, hey, it is no longer the one and done. Like you look at Cal, I mean, he's got a lot of guys that could be still one and done at Arkansas. Where's Arkansas right now? Like, they're a fringe tournament team.
Bingo.
And Cal's probably going to be going home in the first round again, which Kentucky didn't enjoy doing a lot of times with Cal. So I think that's what you're seeing is, because to me, when we were talking in the office, I was like, man, I just feel like the offense is better now in college basketball. And I don't know if that is the game is more modernizing, which I think it is to an extent, as you are seeing more three-point shots being thrown up. You're also just seeing these guys look like better basketball players now. It is no longer hey, it's a freshman. Man, freshmen, they need like 4 years to figure it out. Like you look at these guys like Will Riley, Yakachonis, who's going to get drafted out of, those two are probably going to be one and done for Illinois. Those guys are going to need 3 to 4 years to develop, man. They're going to the NBA. They're going to get their paycheck. Good for them. They need more time in school. Like, those guys are not polished products right now, and it's why Illinois is struggling. They are a young basketball team. They are making young man mistakes, and I think that is what we've seen over the last 10 years of college basketball, and I think this is kind of tied into the NIL era where it has helped these guys stay incentivized to stay in school, really develop, really polish their game, and it makes for a better product all around.
Yeah, when you look at the teams at the top of the list right now when it comes to what they're doing offensively this year in college basketball, it's Auburn, it's Alabama, it's Duke. Alabama is 9th in the country in D1 experience. So how long their players have been around, they're 9th in the country. Auburn is 25th in the country in D1 experience on their roster. You look at some other teams over there, Florida, 60th in the country. Kentucky, 7th in the country. These teams that are up there among the best in offense are very experienced. They have guys that have played a lot of basketball. Mizzou's 40th, and that's low on this list compared to some of these other teams. And they've got dudes like Jacob Cruz that's 25 years old, married with a kid. They have a lot of guys that have played a lot of college basketball, and I think things have swung in the other direction from where it was 10 years ago. I think it's better for fans. I think it's better for basketball that we are seeing some of these teams that have been together or that have just had a lot of experience, even if it wasn't on that team, to your point, T-Bone. They're the ones that are winning right now. It's no longer the John Calipari's. It's teams that are assembling a group of players that have been in college basketball for 2, 3, 4 years at a time. I think it's a better version of basketball. It's what we saw with mid-majors. Like, we saw for a little brief period of time there for 3 to 5 years, the teams that were the one-and-dones were losing to these experienced teams at the mid-major level. Yeah. And now the Power 5 conferences, especially the SEC, have adopted that model, and it's working for them at that level as well.
That's why I think Brad Underwood, I know we're not in the offseason yet, but trust me, Illinois is going to come a lot faster than Missouri's. I'm fascinated to know how Brad Underwood does this offseason. Because think back to last year's Illinois team that I thought could win the title, and then they ran into that freaking buzzsaw UConn. Terrence Shannon was either a 4th or 5th year senior. Damask was a 5th year senior. Those were their 2 leading guys. Coleman Hawkins was a junior, I believe, with the Illini program. Their 3 best players were guys that had experience. And then this offseason, Underwood swung the pendulum. He went very young. He kind of had to, but he swung very young. Kerber, they had only 1 guy return from that team, and here they are, and they're just free falling.
Somebody on the text line brings up Auburn's average age on their roster is 23 and a half. Oklahoma City's Thunder, the best team in my opinion in basketball right now, their average age on their roster is 24. Jeez. It's amazing. These teams that just have so much experience, and their best player is a guy that is a 4th or 5th year senior. That's how you win now in college basketball. It has swung so far back to the direction that it was in the early 2000s. And the version of basketball that I loved, Alex, is the version that we grew up with. Yep. It was always the teams that were the most experienced. Like, you'd see the rise. And then it comes to a crescendo as those teams become like 3rd and 4th year players. That's what we're getting back to. And I think it makes for a hell of a lot more enjoyable experience watching as a fan. And Mizzou's just one of the examples of what's taking place now. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll get into questions and answers. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. But next, T-Bone Squad is apparently listening to all offers on Matthew Stafford. Where's he potentially going to go? And who's going to be his replacement if they do decide to trade Matt Stafford? We'll get into that and more in NFL Quick Hitters here on BK and Ferrario.
Tanner Hendrickson here, the Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals will be back in spring training action here in about 15 minutes as they'll be taking on the New York Yankees today. Michael McGreevy will get the start for St. Louis, and the Blues blew out the Seattle Kraken last night by a final score of 7-2. They'll be back in action on tomorrow night, when they take on the Washington Capitals in Washington. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 5 o'clock with puck drop at 6. The Sports Center is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters, and we got to start with something that I'm, at this point, really hoping happens.
Okay,
T-Bone, it's because I need to see your reaction. I am absolutely rooting for your demise, and I think the audience is probably going to be with me on this. According to Diana Rossini,
this thing already.
Matthew Stafford's exploration of his market value the last few weeks has indeed attracted significant interest from other teams, notably from the Raiders and the Giants. According to Rossini, teams are anticipating the Rams will now be driving up the asking price if they indeed decide to move him. So it sounds like there's at least a real chance that the Rams trade Matthew Stafford prior to this year's NFL draft. My guess is prior to the start of free agency, because they're going to have some sort of a replacement there. And that is backed up with the following report. Aaron Rodgers, according to the New York Daily News, would like to play for the LA Rams.
We're out.
He would also like to see Devontae Adams playing with him on the LA Rams.
Yeah, that's happening.
T-Bone, I need this like I need oxygen to breathe.
Oh,
I so badly need this in my life. The Rams trading for no really good reason, honestly. The Rams trading Matthew Stafford away for fear of his aging curve and signing Aaron Rodgers would be freaking amazing. I so desperately need this in my life, man.
Your team's dumb, T-Bone.
I don't think they're going to do that. Now, I'm still trying to decide which is better, 41-year-old Rodgers or freaking Sam Darnold on a 5-year contract. I'm with you. I think they've played this giant game of chicken, and I think they've just lost. I think Stafford's like, I'll go play for $50 million with the Giants. Hey, man, we may suck, but I'm getting $50 million.
Oh, no, we suck again.
Oh, man. How bad would that be? I think they thought Stafford was going to go out, figure out what his value was, and then come to the Rams and be like, guys, I really don't want to leave. And I think Stafford's come back and said, guys, Giants want me, Raiders want me, let's do this.
What's a bigger misread of the market? Because the Rams clearly misread this in one way or another. Either they thought nobody else was going to be willing to give him that contract, or they thought nobody was going to be all that interested in, or they thought Stafford would not be all that interested in actually leaving.
Oh, I think they thought nobody was going to give him the money. Nobody was going to be interested because he was old, and they're like, nah, you'll come back.
And that's a complete misread.
Yeah.
Dude, teams are desperate. They're always desperate for quarterbacks. And you're telling me Matt Stafford is available? A Super Bowl winning quarterback that has had seasons that are, top 5 to 7 MVP caliber in the NFL?
He still looks really good.
The dude was a drive away from beating the eventual Super Bowl champions.
Was it for a stupid rookie center? We probably do.
They played the Eagles better than anybody else this postseason, and it wasn't particularly close. The Commanders got their asses kicked, and my Chiefs looked even worse.
Yeah.
They had no chance offensively against the Eagles' defense. The Rams looked okay. And not great, but okay. Now, it was in a massive snowstorm, so maybe you want to use that as an aside.
Even better. We don't belong in the snow.
Yeah. I don't understand what the Rams are doing here at all. I get the hesitance to give him the $50 million or the multiple years, but this is what you have to do. It's the reality of being an NFL franchise with a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. You're willingly giving that up? It's crazy to me that they're doing this without an obvious internal candidate to replace him. If they had J.J. McCarthy, cool.
What about
Go
Jimmy
ahead and
G?
do this. No.
They got an obvious internal option. They're going to bring Aaron Rodgers in.
T-Bone, what are they doing?
I don't know. I think it is a misread by them. I never have understood why teams, if he was a 15 to 20th best quarterback in the NFL, I would agree. I would probably say, yeah, let him go explore. Probably better off moving on from him and then going into quarterback purgatory.
He was Sam Darnold.
He's like the second, third best quarterback in the conference, and he's a top 10 quarterback in the league. I don't get this. I hate when NFL teams are like, we're worried about the aging curve with our quarterback, so we better go find his replacement. Guys, odds are you missed on the replacement, and you piss off the guy that's really good, and then he wants out. Looking at you, Packers. Looking at you, Patriots, with Tom Brady when you had him.
What if he's saying, though, that I don't want to be a part of the Rams if you're getting rid of Cooper Kupp?
I think those are different, though. What you just said there, like, the Rodgers thing had gone stale. It was time for everybody to go their separate ways. Tom Brady, that had clearly met the end. Like, they got beat in the playoffs in the first round, and the team was clearly starting to deteriorate around him. So that had also, in my opinion, gone stale. This is different. The Rams were ready to win right now, and they're continuing to have this influx of young talent there. And Stafford is still really good. Like, this is different than the other versions of what this is hubris. This is them believing we can replace Matt Stafford with a mid-level quarterback on a super cheap deal, and we will not miss what Matt Stafford brought to the table. That's what the Rams are doing here. They think Sean McVay has this pixie dust that can make any quarterback into Matthew Stafford, except he can't, because we saw it with Jared Goff where it went awry with him at the helm. Meanwhile, Jared Goff now is with the Detroit Lions, leading one of the best offenses in the NFL. Dude, talent matters, whether it's at the quarterback position or around him, and frankly, both. The Rams are misreading this entirely. They're screwing this up, and I can't wait to see it.
I think Aaron Rodgers is Super Bowl or bust.
I have a tinfoil on what they might be trying. And I don't know, because there's not been reporting connecting them to any of these guys and what they have thought. I wonder if they really like one of the quarterbacks and will trade up. Because
with what?
Well, they've got their first.
How are they trading up?
They've got their 26th overall pick, their first-round pick.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Well, they'll package stuff with it.
And then they don't have one again until 2036.
We don't care about those. We won a damn Super Bowl last time we did that.
I'm not kidding. I don't think they have a package that could get them up to, like, the top 10.
I wonder if they are potentially exploring that. Because the reason I bring it up, and because, again, there's not been reporting that's connecting them saying, like, they really like Cam or they really like Shedeur Sanders, is they really do not want to draft with this 26th overall pick.
They're going to get Jackson Dart.
Oh, God.
I mean, that's what it's got to be,
Dylan
right?
Gabriel.
Because, like, Les Snead views drafting 20 to 32 as, like, purgatory in the first round. He hates having a pick there. So I think he's either going to trade. My tinfoil is they like one of the quarterbacks.
Second-round pick?
It's fine, Brandon.
You don't have picks until 2032.
Stafford's going in return. It's Stafford a first for number 3 with the Giants.
You have 140 overall, 100 overalls. So you could get up to like 17 with this year's first and 2/3. And then if you add in next year's first, you could probably get yourself roughly into the like 8 to 10 range.
You get Aaron Rodgers.
When I added
your
Matthew Stafford into this
2/3
package.
this year.
You get Aaron Rodgers
next year, and then you get Aaron Rodgers.
No,
then you get
we're
that
not getting
second-round
Rodgers.
pick for Stafford, and that becomes your. You could make it happen. It ain't easy, but you could make it happen.
And if I know the
Mortgage your
Rams,
entire roster.
Trading makes sense for them.
yeah,
Stylistically.
I wonder if they like Shedeur or Ward and will trade up and go get them. Shedor's the one that I think makes the most sense for them. I wouldn't do it, but
If you're getting rid of Stafford, I would.
yeah, I agree. Because I don't want Darnold. I don't want Rodgers. I sure as hell don't want Jimmy G running the show.
I like the.
That's
I like
my
the theory.
tinfoil.
I like that tinfoil. I don't
Even
know
though
if it's
you're
going to happen.
pooping on it 5
That's not
seconds ago.
happening. Your package is terrible.
It's just a lot of picks. 2 first-rounders, 2 third-rounders to move up to be able to get your guy. But no, if he's good, it's worth everything. It doesn't matter
And they
what the
did that
package
for
is.
Stafford, right? They gave up. Now they had
Well, they
Goff
did it
in the
for
deal.
Goff, yeah.
But they also, I think they put 2 firsts in that trade, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but if I'm a team and I want one of these quarterbacks, I'm not going to take all those picks when I got the quarterback sitting right there.
Somebody said, "BK, this isn't Madden. Stop throwing trade offers out there." I'm telling you what it would take for them to get up there. Like there's charts out there that show you kind of what roughly you'd have to give up in order to move up in the NFL draft. The Rams would have to give up their first-round pick this year, first-round pick next year, both of their third-round picks. This is what they have available. This isn't even like me randomly selecting their selection. This is it. And then if they are able to trade Matt Stafford, yeah, you probably use that pick to throw into the mix as well. It's a lot. But you get cheaper, you get younger.
Feels
you
like
can
a
potentially
Rams
add
move.
elsewhere.
Good luck.
This week is the NFL Combine, by the way. Travis Hunter is going to be the biggest storyline at the NFL Combine because he's unbelievable and he can play both ways. Out of curiosity, we'll get out of here on this and we'll get to questions and answers on the other side. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you were a team or Travis Hunter, what is his primary position in your opinion? What's the more valuable place where if I said, okay, he's going to be a top 10 player at his position on either side of the ball, is it more valuable to have him at wide receiver or at corner, in your opinion?
I would go wide receiver. I think it helps the team right now, and if you're him, probably going to get you paid more.
If I'm him, I want to be a receiver for that reason.
I agree
Receivers
with
are
that.
getting 30 a year. Corners are getting like 20 to 25. It's a pretty significant difference in terms of the salary.
I think you help a team win faster if you go there and you're a really good wide
If
receiver.
I'm a team, I think I want him at corner.
That's
harder
what
to
I was
find.
thinking. That's the exact
Think
same
about
thing I
how
was
many
thinking
good
of.
receivers there are in the NFL right now. Just really good receivers. I could list like 30, and we could still continue to go along. At corner, I could probably list 7, maybe 10. There's just not that many really good high-level corners, especially corners like him that are 6'1", 200 pounds, rare ball skills, can shut down basically any receiver he goes up against. I think if I'm a team, I want him at corner. It's going to be a really interesting decision because if I'm him, I think I want to play receiver. So I also think it's easier to play corner full-time and go get a few plays on offense than it is to play offense full-time and then go out there and play on the defensive side of the ball occasionally. Coming up next, time for questions and answers here on BK and Ferrario. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, get them in right now. Or you can check out on YouTube as well. You can get your questions in over there at youtube.com/101ESPN Let's start out with this from the 573, Alex. Based on the severe offseason inactivity by the Cardinals, what do you view as their floor or ceiling for the upcoming season?
I think I've said this and kind of remained steadfast on this. I'm thinking somewhere between 78 and 80 wins. It was 75 prior to Nolan Arenado being here. I think he's good for a couple of extra ones. I think he has a bounce back, but I don't think you go past 80.
I think their floor is 65 wins.
Holy crap.
62. I think they could be a 100-loss team if their floor is 100 losses.
You were the one that was like, Quinn Matthews is going to be here to start the year.
But their offense, if they don't hit, I don't care how good their pitching is. They're going to be a 100-loss team.
And they can't hit with runners in scoring position.
As we know. By the way, their offenses look like a word I can't say on air during spring so far. I think their ceiling.
I would be willing to bet any amount of money this team doesn't lose 100 games this year. Any amount of money.
Do I get plus odds?
Take that.
I get
This is like the Kevin Malone quote from The Office. If somebody bets you 100,000 to 1 odds, you take that bet.
Yeah. I think their ceiling is 80 wins. I think odds are they finish between 70 and 80. I do think their floor is 100
DK,
losses.
mortgage your house on it.
I would be willing to. That's insane.
Let's do it. I've been looking at the housing market. I've been looking at the housing market.
Genuinely, I'm
not close.
baffled that you just said that.
Are you though? I've been ripping on this offense.
Do you know how hard it is to lose 100 games?
You know how bad their offense could be?
Yeah, not bad enough. The teams that lose 100 games are historically bad. Do you know how many teams last year in Major League Baseball lost 100 games?
Let's see. Miami.
It's one.
Did they? Yeah.
Colorado. They lost
exactly
100 games. Colorado, 101 losses. And then Chicago was terrible.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about them. So
you think they are that bad?
I think they could be.
No chance. No freaking chance.
Let's put money on it then, Brandon.
I actually think you could be the Colorado offense.
No.
Not even that good. They get high altitude.
I mean, that's true. They get better hitting at home.
I think the floor is 70. I think that's even a little low, but I think 70 if they decide to sell off parts of the deadline.
You guys were five losses apart, 65 to 70.
No, 70 wins.
I thought you said the floor was 70.
Wins is the floor. That's almost 10 games, which is a huge, huge gap in Major League Baseball. That's like saying
I'm with you,
80 versus a 90-win team is the same.
Don't be peer pressured. I'm with you. Stick to it.
I think the ceiling for them is 86.
What?
I think the ceiling is 86 games.
You are real optimistic.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers from the 501. I 100% believe they could lose more than 90 games. Yeah, that's different than losing 100. 100 games
you're rounding up to
more
100
than 90. It's close to 100.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still about 65 wins. Come on, man. You're the math guy.
That 23 team lost, 91, and that offense could be better than what this one could be.
And that pitching was horrific. All right, from the 314. Guys, did you hear the praise that Ryan Suter had for Braden Shin last night on the late shift? If so, why would you even consider trading him? I did not hear this.
So I didn't either. I was doing post game, but I did see a lot of people comment on it, so I got to go back and listen to it. But I mean, Ryan Suter. Here's the thing: Ryan Suter's been around the league for a very long time. He's seen some really good captains in terms of Shea Weber, Joe Pavelski. Trying to think of who else was the captains in Nashville when he was there. But, I mean, he's been around a lot of really good players. Look, it was a Blues post-game show that they had on the website, so obviously he's going to be talking highly of Braden Shen. I'm not actively shopping Shen. And I know all of these rumors coming out there seem like that the Blues are calling everybody saying, hey, you want Shen? You want Shen? I think what this is the Blues have basically said, yeah, look, we're open to listen to everything. And teams have called and said, we really want Braden Shen. Cool. We really want your best player. And then they hang up the phone. So I don't think this is going to be Shen's going to be gone. I just think the Blues are open to business because they were bad.
And I want to continue pulling on that thread. Can the Blues be the Rays of this year's NHL Trade Deadline? That's the team that I think they could most closely align with. Last year at the Major League Baseball Trade Deadline, there were almost no sellers. There's just not players available because everybody felt like they were still in it, and that included, unfortunately, the St. Louis Cardinals. And so what it ended up happening was there was such a small amount of supply at the deadline that the demand for players was astronomical, and the prices were crazy. So the Rays said, hey, we're going to go ahead and take advantage of this. We're going to make some deals. Let's see what's out there available for us. So they made a ton of moves, and we'll see if it ends up working out. But that could be available for the Blues this year at the deadline. We'll discuss it, see if that's something that makes sense for them next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK for my friends over at Victory Men's Health, and they believe that it is time for you to unlock your inner champion. That means different things for different people. Maybe for you, that means going out there, checking out where your testosterone levels are at. Do you have the same energy that you once did? Are you getting the same amount out of your workouts as you did earlier in your 20s, in your early 30s? If the answer to those questions is no, it could be due to low testosterone. They can check out where those levels are for you. There's a healthy range for adult men, and if you're getting towards the lower end of that, they can boost you back up to the top end to feel your best possible. They'll unlock your inner champion. Maybe you want some help with unwanted weight gain. They can help you with that weight loss, erectile dysfunction issues, men. They can help you out with that. Or even if you're just interested in their vitamin infusions or their red light therapy program, they've got so much available for you. They've got 4 great locations across the St. Louis area. For me, I go out to the Town and Country one, but they have 4 locations that you can check out on their website today. VictoryMen'sHealth.com. That's where you're going to set up that first appointment. Victory Men's Health and VictoryMen'sHealth.com. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, so there's another piece that came out earlier today, Alex, and you know this is the time of the year where speculation is
Crazy
ripe
season
for the taking. And Nick Caprios is more than happy to add to that speculation
That
over
jerk.
on Sportsnet.
Attaboy.
He put up his trade board 4.0. The 4th version of this is we are now a week away from the NHL's
Was he
trade
got
deadline.
a mock draft for trades?
I guess so.
I'm shocked it's
Trade
only
board
4. The Athletics on 7.
4.0. Here's how he begins. Is there anything new an NHL team can learn in less than 10 days prior to the trade deadline? That's what many teams are asking themselves. Teams have their trade wish list set and ready to go, but what isn't yet set is how high of a price they're willing to pay. Believe it or not, there's still plenty of time for decisions to be made, and this is where it gets interesting. Take the St. Louis Blues, for example. I have 5 Blues players on this week's trade list, and they will be listening on even more as general manager Doug Armstrong considers how to take on a new approach with this team before handing things over to Alexander Steen in 2026. We should be clear about something, however. This is not a fire sale for the St. Louis Blues.
He's listening to more than 5 people, but this is not a fire sale.
Now, this is, I think, a really important line. They will look to move 1 or 2 of the big pieces they are listening to offers on in an effort to change the look and feel of the roster for next season. The only untouchable player, again, this is according to Nick Kyprios on Sportsnet.com. The only untouchable player is believed to be Robert Thomas. Army is thinking about taking a similar approach as the Washington Capitals, who did many teams a favor by showing that you don't have to go into a 5-year rebuild if things aren't going according to plan. So that is most of what he had to say there. He then continues along with who the players are that he potentially has on this list. The 5 guys that he had mentioned from the Blues, for what it's worth, are Jordan Binnington, Pavel Buchnevich, Jordan Kyrou, Braden Shin, and Colton Parayko. Now, you can take those or leave them. I think this is what you said, Alex, in the last segment. They're listening on everything, as they should. Find out what the value is out there. And if somebody's willing to give you, a Matthew Tkachuk, if you're able to pair together, I don't know, Braden Shin and Jordan Kyrou. Again, this is not happening, but in this scenario, sure, yeah, we're willing to talk about Braden Shin and Jordan Kyrou because we're getting in return one of the faces of the sport. That's the kind of thing that you have to do if you're the president of hockey operations. It is a smart place to go if you're in this spot where you're kind of middling right now as a team. So yeah, listen on everything. Actually consider much, much, much less. Alex, my question to you is based on this. Like, there are not very many teams that are legitimate sellers right now. Mm-hmm. Almost everybody in the East thinks they're still in it. And the teams that are out of it in the West, dude, most of them have nothing to trade. They've been picked to pieces. And this is what happened in Major League Baseball. You looked at the A's, you're like, man, what do they have to sell? You look at the White Sox, okay, so they've got Eric Fetty, Luis Robert, who's a distressed asset at this point, and that's kind of it. There just weren't many players on these really bad teams. The same is true right now in the NHL. And what happened? There were a couple of teams that took advantage, most notably the Tampa Bay Rays. They said, there's an opportunity here. We're not a real contender. We're going to start selling off our assets because nobody else is willing to do it. There's a market that exists that we can take advantage of. The Blues seem to be in a very similar spot. The core, they're not sure about. They're trying to transition the way that the Rays were. The couple of guys that were getting expensive, maybe you can move off of deals that you don't want to have on the books any longer. Alex, is that the approach, in your opinion, that they should take, no matter what happens over the next week at this year's trade deadline?
Yeah, I think they absolutely should. Like, I don't buy the only untouchable is Robert Thomas from Nick Kyprios because I would put a couple of other guys in there, but I do think Doug Armstrong has basically told everybody, look, we're willing to listen on anything. Because if you're not, then you miss out on the Mikko Rantanens getting traded. Then you miss out on the Bo Byrams getting traded last year. If you're not willing to answer the phone call when a team calls and says, hey, we want Colton Parayko, well, then you're not doing your due diligence as general manager. And go back to what Doug Armstrong had originally said, what was this, a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how, maybe I have to reevaluate how we look at our own players. So, yeah, I think he's willing to listen to a lot. And I think it's smart right now because look at the state of the potential trade deadline. I don't think Buffalo's trading anything. Pittsburgh can't trade anything. The Philadelphia Flyers aren't willing to trade anything. You go down to the Western Conference. What does San Jose have to offer? What do the Chicago Blackhawks have to offer? Barry Trotz has essentially told his team, look, we'll try and run it back next year. There's not
they can't. They transitioned, right. And this is it. Like we're all in on this core group of players, and it sucks.
I think his hit on Nashville radio yesterday was like, "Look, I told all of our players, if you don't want to be here, then tell me, and I'll trade you."
Good luck.
Yeah, but there's not a whole lot out there at the trade deadline. Now, you've got the pending UFAs, you've got the Brock Nelsons, the Trent Fredericks, the Mikko Rantanens if he gets moved again. Those, though, only cost you first-round draft picks and lower-level prospects. The Blues are kind of the kings of the market in terms of players with term on their contract. Is it good term on players that might be aging poorly? Absolutely. But if teams don't find the rentals to meet the same level as a Braden Shen or a Justin Falk or a Nick Leddy or even a Jordan Binnington, if you go down that path, then yeah, they're going to call. And Doug needs to do his job and say, yeah, what are you offering me? Because if you're not giving me something that's playing on my team the moment we strike this trade, then I'm not making the deal. This isn't, we're going to the trade deadline and we're trading guys for mid-level prospects that aren't going to be here for 2 years. They've done that already. They've got those guys. If they're making trades of anybody on this roster with term, it's going to be cool. That player's coming back in return to play on our roster right away.
And I agree they can be the ones that can kind of dictate this trade deadline. I think what makes it so hard for what they want to accomplish if they are looking to trade two guys with term is the fact that, like, the cap hasn't moved in the last couple of years. It's gone up only $1.2 million. Now, it will explode next season for them. But, I mean, we've talked about this before. You don't see a lot of guys with like a $6.5 million cap hit get moved. And that's where it's going to be really hard to make a Shen trade. Now, I understand.
I'm less worried about that, more worried about the no-trade clause.
Well, that's the other thing, too, is the no-trade clauses play into this as well.
I think you can make the money work,
guys.
given what the explosion is in the cap, but those no-trade clauses, I think, are tough.
Here's the thing with those no-trade clauses, though. One, the Brandon Saad thing did happen, and I got to imagine players looking at being like, oh, geez, the threat is there. But two, all of those no-trade clauses become modified no-trade clauses after this year. Like Falks is a modified, Leddy's is a modified.
Not Booch.
Booch isn't, but I think they're going to view this as Booch is still a core piece. As much as we're talking about it, I think they're looking at this as, look, it's going to be some type of turnaround. But even Braden Shen's becomes a modified after this year.
In like the offseason, like I don't question that they can move some of these guys. Like I think they could trade Shen in the offseason if they want to. My fear, though, is that this trade deadline is going to be more of setting up conversations for the offseason. Because I just worry they're not going to be able to get things done. Whether it's because of the no trade, whether it's because of the money that's attached to their cap hits, I think this is going to be more of the conversation starting point than it is going to be where trades are made. And the reason why I just don't think they can be the Rays of this year's trade deadline is the Rays just have it a little easier to where there were no guys with no trade protection. Those guys were not making as much, but there is no cap to worry about in baseball, so they could really make those moves happen. I think that's why, in theory, the Blues are, I do agree with, they are probably the team that can really swing this deadline and maybe make this thing exciting here as we get to March, what is it, 7th is the deadline? Mm-hmm. Problem is I think they're in such a tough bind and there's so many loopholes that they've got to go through that I just don't know if they can make it happen.
Yeah, I don't know that they're going to be able to make it happen. I also just don't know how much incentive there is to make it happen because they don't need to do this with any of these core guys that we're talking about right now. Mm-hmm. In fact, you're right. It gets a little easier in the offseason. Like Braden Shen, you've got a full no-trade clause right now, and in the offseason, that becomes 15 teams. So in the offseason, if we want to make that move, guess what? We can. You can't say no to some of the teams that we would otherwise have available to us right now. The same thing is true for a guy like Justin Falk or in Nick Leddy. But I don't know that you need to do it right now. There's not necessarily the incentive other than this. These other teams that are trying to acquire, especially Shin, are doing so because of the urgency of winning now. And that is where you get the most return possible. It's why I have said all along, I don't hate the way that the Cardinals are approaching Ryan Helsley, because I think his position becomes most valuable at the trade deadline, because that's a guy that helps you get through October more than it is a guy that helps you get to October. And if you're a contender and you realize in July, hey, we don't really have the guy that we want closing out games, how do we go acquire that player? Well, you can go to the Cardinals for Ryan Helsley, and there's going to be probably 7 to 10 teams that need that player at the back end of their bullpen. So that's when you get the urgency, boom, prices explode, and there's nowhere else you can go because other teams that have that player want him on their team. So I don't mind that. The Blues are in a similar spot with Shin, because if you're a team like the Maple Leafs that needs a middle six center, man, there's just not many available. Yeah. Like you could go get Casey Middlestat right now. Hey, he's on a contender right now, and they're trying to upgrade from him for the same reason. You can go get, who's the guy from Philly, Alex, that we were listening about earlier
Scott
today?
Lawton.
Yeah, go get Scott Lawton. Cool. He's a 35 to 40-point producer.
Yeah, he's Max Domi.
He's a true third-line center in he's an Oscar Sundqvist plus type. Mm-hmm. not similar in terms of playing styles, but that's the kind of production you're expecting out of him. Shen's a 50-plus point producer, man. It's just hard to find these guys. And if you're the Leafs and he plays the style, he's got the production that you're looking for, now is when you have to strike. So I think that's why now makes sense. If you're the Blues, though, you can do this whenever.
Yeah, well, and that's why, at least at the trade deadline, I warned people with all of the rumors and the speculation of like, oh, yeah, Colton Parayko's name's out there, Braden Shen's name's out there. Absolutely, because other GMs want those players. But if you're Doug Armstrong, you missed the playoffs this year. Well, guess what? The same goal next year is what the goal this year was. Make the playoffs. And if you trade away Shen for a guy who's playing in the OHL or trade Binnington away for some AHL defenseman, that doesn't make you better next year. And the goal is going to be the exact same next year as it is this year to make the playoffs. So if they're getting something, it's what Jaron Drager told us. It's a mammoth return, meaning it's an NHL player that's coming back to play right away.
What do you think Blues fans would deem as a success at this year's trade deadline? I say that
under the mindset of they're not making the playoffs, or
that's the thing.
Because I think a success would be go out in there and add a third line center.
A different way. What do you think would be considered a success for the Blues at the deadline? Because it's hard to speak for all Blues fans. I think they're clearly, based on our poll the other day, 50% of fans want them to make the playoffs and 50% want them to tank.
Yeah.
So for you, Alex, given what you want the Blues to do, which is make the playoffs, what do you think a successful deadline looks like?
I think it's to add a third line center. Add somebody who can take Sundqvist's spot that gives you an upgrade so that you can run 4 lines that you're comfortable with. And then you can assess the top line winger in the offseason and where you're at. And maybe it fails. Maybe the guy that you bring doesn't match. But if you're going to go out and acquire that piece, it's a player that fits into the now and for the move forward.
Timon, what do you think that looks like for you?
For me, it's trading probably Braden Shen. Or one of the core pieces, I would say, making a change up with the core, because I think they need it, and I think it's better to potentially do it now. I would say it's probably trade Shen or one of the core pieces and get something back that helps you long term. I would be a seller still. I would not be buying.
I just don't know what's out there that's helping you long term if you're moving one of those guys, because basically you're moving them for another guy who needs a change of scenery.
Or like on the Shen one, you're moving him to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and you're getting 2 of their top prospects in return.
Yeah.
And I think that could really help you, man. That Fraser, is that his name?
Yeah, Fraser Minton.
He makes a lot of sense for the Blues, given where he's at in his career and given where the Blues are at right now as an organization. And then their defenseman that they've got that's coming up as well. It sure sounds like the type of player that the Blues could use. And he's, instead of being a draft pick, he's somebody that's pretty close to being ready for the NHL level.
Well, good news for you guys. I got a Ferrario 5 of what a successful trade deadline is going to look like.
5 guys we can trade?
And we'll get into that coming up at the 1 o'clock hour. My success at this year's deadline, I know this sounds crazy. I think it's to stand pat. I think it's stand pat, and then in the offseason, explore the moves that we're talking about. If you can get a dynamite return, then just do that. But in terms of the most likely outcome of this year's deadline, I think it's probably just chilling with what you've got right now. And then in the offseason, when you get some of these no-trade clauses that become modifieds, make the moves that you're looking to do in the offseason. Those are off-season moves, not in-season moves. You're going to get a better return at that point in time for NHL-ready players. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. More likely to happen is next year on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. You guys give us two scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely. Alex is pre-mad. He's big mad. He'll tell you why coming up in the next segment as well. But right now it's time for more likely to happen. Guys, let's start out with this. More likely to be in the Cardinals' opening day lineup. Alec Burleson or Victor Scott?
I'll say Victor Scott. If he continues this pace throughout spring training, it's going to be hard for them to deny him a starting spot in center field. And this is different than last year's spring training where it was like, look at the speed, you got to play him. This is like, he hit a monster home run yesterday. He's hitting the ball hard, and it makes sense where it fits in because then Nootbaar goes back to the corner outfield spot. Burleson's still not in the lineup, but I think if you're hoping Victor Scott performs in center or in spring training, that provides a little bit more oomph to your lineup. So I'll say Victor Scott.
I think I'll go Victor Scott as well. I think it's easier to find his playing time in the spot in the opening day lineup than it is Burley's, because I'm still skeptical they're going to go to get Burley, and you got to go with Nootbaar in center. I'm still a little skeptical if they're going to really do that by the time we get to opening day. They're tinkering with it here in spring training, but I'll say Victor Scott. If Victor Scott can hit the baseball, and like we saw yesterday, that guy wins the center field job, and he gets the start on opening day.
Sweep it. We're all on the same page. I don't think Alec Burleson's starting for this team on opening day this year. I think that's a mistake. I think he should be in your lineup. I think he's one of your 6 best hitters on the roster, and not getting him in there in some way, shape, or form feels like a missed opportunity for me, given where you're at as an organization. But I think it would require a Nolan Arenado trade for them to get Alec Burleson every day at bats. So I think it's more likely that Victor Scott gets in there because of all of the things that you've said about what he's done thus far and the difficulty of finding a spot for Alec Burleson's bat. Alex, what do you got for us?
Guys, more likely to happen. The Blues finish with 9 goal scorers with double digits, or they finish with 0 that has 30 goals.
Let me go ahead.
Right now they have
to the Blues goal scoring 0 with 30.
Yeah.
The other one.
Yeah, they have 7
Jordan Kyrou
double-digit goal scorers
already. He's getting to 30. Jordan Kyrou is putting up one hell of a season, man. A really good year by Jordan Kyrou. He's on pace for 33 goals, 65 points, and a plus 17. That's a hell of a season.
That'll play.
Yeah.
Here are your plus-minus leaders. Kyrou, Bolduc, Holloway.
Just
Bolduc,
how
by
I
the
would
way,
say.
good game for him last night.
Bolduc looks
He was
like
awesome.
an NHL middle 6 winger, and as much as we've talked about in the past of like maybe you trade him to go get something, starting to look more and more like a guy that you want on this team moving forward.
He looks like a very good third-line winger.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I've always made the comp to David Perron, and it's not just because of the French-Canadian accent. He plays like Perron used to play when he was younger. He's got that offensive skill. He likes to hit other people. It's just a matter of understanding the game and the timeliness of it.
I liked what Monty said last night. And Jamie's talked about this on the Fast Lane before, where he said, hey, as a player, all I can ask for is when I'm bad, tell me I'm bad. But then when I'm good, you better mention the fact that I'm good. And Zach Bolduc had a great game last night, and after the game, what did Jim Montgomery do? He said, hey, I really like what he's doing away from the puck. I think he's creating better habits away from the puck, and it's something that I've been really impressed by. That's something that'll play with a young player. You can criticize him all you want, but when he's showing the progress, make sure that you note that.
And play him that way, and they've given him more ice time. Last night, they played him almost 16 minutes because he was performing well.
All right, T-Bone, sorry. We cut into your time there, but more likely to happen, no 30 goal scorers for the Blues, or how many?
It'd be 10 double-digit goal scorers. They'd need 3 more guys to do it.
Yeah, I'll still say that one just because I can't imagine Kyrou not getting 30.
Bolduc will get there. Fowler will get there. And the 10th is tough.
Yeah, the 10th one is very tough. The next closest is Brandon Saad, who's not here anymore.
Yeah, Nathan
Well, if
Walker
I count his
6.
total goals on the year,
By the
he'll
way,
get
Nathan
there.
Walker having a good year.
Dude, Nathan Walker, every that's what I'm saying. Like, if I'm the Blues, I look at Fox and be like, hey, let's just re-sign you rather than trade you. My 4th line next year is in permanent marker. Fox, Toropchenko, and Walker every single game.
T-Bone, what do you got?
Guys more likely to be buyers at their respective deadline, the Blues or the Cardinals?
Blues.
What if the Cardinals are in it?
What are you doing? You said they're going to be a 62-win team.
I said that was their floor. I said I mostly think that they're about 70 to 80.
Yeah, I don't think that there's the range of outcomes is there for the Cardinals to be a buyer at the deadline, but it just requires so much to go right. And meanwhile, for the Blues, it requires them to win like 3 games in the next week.
Yeah.
So there's just less variance here with what we're seeing with the Blues. I think it's more likely that they decide to do so. Also, they've stated all year and made moves accordingly. They want to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So if they think there's a real chance that they can get in, I do think they'll try to add something like what Alex said, which is a third line center.
Stay tuned for the Ferrario Five. That's mine as well.
I think I agree with you guys. I was leaning Cardinals, but you guys have convinced me. Mostly because I forgot that Army thinks for some reason this is a playoff team.
For some reason, they're 3 points at 4 points out.
They haven't played like a playoff team since Czech's calendar ever
Got
this
points
season.
in 5 of 6 games. What more could you ask for?
I mean, how about a 3-game winning streak?
Well, that's going to happen
even the
tomorrow.
Sharks have done that, and they're
That's true.
awful.
No,
The
even
Kraken have done it. Guys, I was in attendance last night. That's one of the worst hockey games I've seen played this season.
Yeah, I think the Kraken gave up that first goal, and they're like, oh, cool. We're just not going to play the rest of this
He
game.
also had a goal. That was his NHL debut.
It was his NHL. Well, I don't think he was planning on playing.
From the 314, more likely to happen, guys. The Blues acquire Trent Frederick at the deadline, or they sell 2 pieces at the deadline. If you're going to go any individual player, I'll say the other. It's just hard to make a deal work.
Yeah.
And so specifically for Trent Frederick, I would say it's more likely they end up selling 2 pieces.
Because if I'm the Blues, I'm not going to give up assets to get Trent Frederick and compete with other teams that want Trent Frederick. I'll try and get him in the free agency. It's pretty obvious he wants to hit free agency to see what's out there because he's not listening to offers from Boston. I'll take my shot in the St. Louis kid wanting to play for St. Louis.
Yeah, I think I'll say more likely they trade away 2 pieces just because it's hard to make the deal with the one. And, like, technically trading 2 pieces could be small deals like trading Suter, trading Foxer or Sonny. So I'll say that one over the trading for Frederick.
All right, next one up here. Guys, more likely to happen. The Cardinals win 86 games or 71 games this upcoming season. 71 games would be 20 games under 500. 86 games would be 10 games above 500.
71.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I do too. I don't think their ceiling's 86 wins. I think their ceiling is 80. And I think for them to get to 86, they would need to do what I mentioned earlier, is become a buyer at the trade deadline to get there.
I think their path to 86 is that the Central stinks, and you have some guys that take steps forward. We know who they are, and you become last year's version of the Tigers. I think that's your path. I don't know how likely it is. I think it's pretty unlikely, but that's the path for you to get there. I didn't think the Tigers were going to be an 86-win team last year either. You were an 83-win team a year ago. We all agreed that was not a true talent 83-win team, but they got there nonetheless. It's at least in the range of outcomes, but it's like a very tail outcome for them. All right, coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to dive into the junk drawer. But next, Alex is really mad about the St. Louis Cardinals, and Nolan Arenado went on a road trip today. What does it mean? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendricks here, the Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals currently taking on the New York Yankees in spring training action. 2 perfect innings from Michael McGreevy, who got the start with 2 strikeouts. Tink Hintz currently pitching for St. Louis as they trail the Yankees 1-0 in the home half of the third. Last night, Blues blew out the Seattle Kraken. They'll be back in action tomorrow night as they visit the Washington Capitals. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 5 o'clock with Alex Ferrario, then puck drop at 6 o'clock with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. CBLauto.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Tink Hintz just gave up an absolute missile.
Ace.
So things not going super well for him to start things off, but the first pitcher to enter the game for the Cardinals, the starter today, was Michael McGreevy. And Alex, he threw 2 perfect innings. Now, he did have one that was hit really hard off of the bat, that Michael Ciani, who's an excellent defender in center field, none of us have ever questioned that, made a great play on out there. So that's worth noting. The results don't tell the entire story. However, it was 2 perfect innings from Michael McGreevy against what is effectively the opening day lineup for the New York Yankees, just without Aaron Judge. So set him aside. But everything else that they're going to have 1 through 6 basically in there today: Chisholm, Dominguez, Bellinger, Goldie, Wells, Volpe. That's their lineup, man. Alex, the reason I bring this up is because I'm with you on this. I don't understand why the Cardinals are making this a competition, honestly. Just Michael McGreevy should be in your rotation. The competition to me should be, hey, Michaelis and Matz, you guys are battling for a spot. One of you guys can have a spot in the rotation. And they should be trading Eric Fetty most likely this year. Like the opening day starting rotation in my mind should be Sonny, Matthews, McGreevy, Palante, and then Michaelis or Matz. But they're not going to do that. So take out Matthews, honestly, put Fetty in there, and boom, there's your spots. Sonny, Fetty, McGreevy, Palante, and then one of Michaelis or Matz.
But
why can't we do that?
Here's why I'm big mad. Why is it so definitive? Well, they're not going to do that. If I were to look at any other organization in baseball and say, hey, I've got a pitcher who has thrown 284 innings in AAA, and last season he got 3 starts and had a 1.96 ERA and went 23 1/3 innings for you, what do you think that organization would say? We're burying him in the minors again?
Well, is it the Dodgers? Because then yes.
Yeah, sure. The Dodgers have 17 starting pitchers.
Double-A for the Dodgers.
Any other starting pitcher in that sense.
Sorry, he got demoted.
Yeah. No, that organization would be like, cool, that guy's ready for the big leagues. And then Quinn Matthews. I don't think, at least for me, I had any expectation of him making this team out of spring training. Because
and I'm okay with that one, honestly.
Yeah, but if he
I'd
goes
like to see it, but
if he goes through spring training and he dominates like we've seen, why would I look at this and be like, nah, put him back in the minors. Let him keep growing. Man. It's ridiculous because they're doing this for Eric Fetty and Steven Matz. Eric Fetty
and
is
Michaelis.
Well, yes, but Michaelis
I know, man, but hey, at a certain point in time, the Yankees, who they're going up against today, they've got Marcus Stroman, who's livid about this. He's a bullpen arm as of today.
Fine.
And like Michaelis is making the same amount of money this year as Marcus Stroman and does not have the player option that Marcus Stroman has attached to his contract. If you have to go to the bullpen to be a long reliever, you got to do it. But that's what's best for the team sometimes,
here's why
man.
Fetty
That's what the money is for.
Here's why Fetty and Matz bother me more. There's a market for Eric Fetty. There was a market for Eric Fetty. You don't think the Mets would like Eric Fetty right now if you called him up and said, look, we're trying to move him. And he's not a part of the team beyond this year because they're not going to re-sign him. Steven Matz, we can sit here and talk about every single outing he has in spring training. Be like, oh, my God, what an effective, efficient outing for Steven Matz. He's not going to be healthy for you. Put him in the bullpen and say, we need you longevity-wise. You know who is a part of the future? A guy who pitched 3 starts for you last year and went 3-0 against major league quality teams.
And set aside what he did in the majors, although that is impressive and I'm happy about it. Dude, last year in the minors, he threw 150 innings. The year before that, 150 innings. The year before that, 145 innings. This is somebody that you can depend upon. 27, 27, 28 starts over the past 3 years down in the minor leagues for the St. Louis Cardinals. This is what they're missing. This is what they're looking for, right? They want that stability inside of their rotation. Well, there is maybe no starter in all of minor league baseball that has been more stable over the last 3 seasons. You can expect a 4.0 ERA and 28 starts out of Michael McGreevy every single season down in the minors. That's what you get out of him. That is not anything that you're going to be super excited about. We will probably get midway through the year if the Cardinals decide to do this, and there will be some that say Michael McGreevy is disappointing relative to my expectations. That will happen because he's a pitch-to-contact guy. He's probably going to have a mid-4s ERA. It's not super sexy stuff. That's what he is. Don't expect anything more. But you know what's super valuable? A number 4 or 5 starter that costs you $1 million. So that way you don't then have to go out in the future and get the next Kyle Gibson or the next Lance Lynn or the next Steven Matz. These guys cost you $10 to $15 million every single year. Stop paying for that because you have it internally, and now you can have Palante and McGreevy as your 4-5 for the foreseeable future. Hopefully, you will also have Quinn Matthews as your number 3. That's a combined $3 million. Maybe it's $5 million next year for Palante, who's going to be in arbitration. $5 million for those 3 players, 3 through 5 in your rotation. Now I can reallocate those resources elsewhere that I'm not spending on Matz. I'm not spending on Michaelis. I'm not spending, hopefully, on Fetty. That opens up, what, $35 million between those 3, or $30 million between those 3 players? Dude, that's real coin to be able to go out there and spend. So I'm with you. I would do this. McGreevy today, this was just the latest reminder. I'm not like making this decision based on 2 good innings against the New York Yankees, but it's a reminder of what he's capable of.
This is
frustrating.
This is the same type of frustration that I had last year when Matthew Liberatore looked really good out of the bullpen, but then every time they needed a spot start, they said Liberatore's a starter for us. And I'm like, why? What are we doing? The guy has shown you his role. He's very effective at it. Keep him at it. McGreevy would come up. He'd get a start. He'd look great, and then you wouldn't see him again.
But that one, to me, you could kind of explain of, hey, McGreevy may not be ready right now. He's at AAA. Same with Graceffo. Now, we did see them come up and eventually have success, but at that point, it was more about, hey, let's still get them seasoning. And they may even do that if they have an injury early on and Quinn Matthews starts the year at AAA. So, like, that one I can kind of explain. The McGreevy one I can't, because you're right. There's nothing to prove at the minors. There is no long-term value with him as a long reliever. That's where you can just bury a bad contract if need be. Miles Michaelis, hey, man, sorry. You go into the Gio role, which happened last year, which was, dude, Gio's clearly not the same guy. At some point, we're probably going to move on from him. We're trying to cut him. And you know what? Go be that guy that when a game's a blowout, we'll bring you in. That's what Gio ended up serving. Now, he doesn't have as big a contract as Michaelis, but that's what they could do. Matt's you can put into the bullpen. I think he'd play up in the bullpen. I feel like you saw that in the 22 season.
What's frustrating is he's good there. He becomes an asset out of the bullpen. It's not just we got to make a bad contract work, so we're putting it into the bullpen because that's the only place that we can put him. No, Steven Matz could then have a second career in Major League Baseball where he becomes a dynamite left-handed bullpen option for a team the way that we saw last year with the New York Yankees, who the Cardinals are playing today. Luke Weaver. He could become Luke Weaver.
And then Steven Matz is a hell of an asset at the trade deadline.
Bingo.
Because left-handed relievers that have the ability to start would get you something pretty nice.
And he would have some minimal upside as a starter. Like, we've seen it before. Like, I think he can be high number 4, number 3 maybe when he's got his best stuff. Because Matz does have a little swing and miss in his game when he's right. So he could be like a Brandon Pfaadt for a playoff rotation, right? But what are you giving up for that guy at the deadline? You're going to give up more for a guy that could be a high-leverage left-handed reliever out of a bullpen rather than that guy as a starter. You can just throw one of your kids out there and figure that out when you get to the playoffs.
Now, doing this does lower your floor a little bit. To T-Bone's point earlier of our floor versus
like 100
ceiling.
losses?
I don't think that you get there because I do think McGreevy is a pretty stabilizing force inside of that rotation, but he's probably going to have more bad days potentially than some of these veterans that we're talking about here. Like if you decided to trade Fetty and you put McGreevy into your rotation, you get worse. Fetty is a better pitcher today, I would expect, than Michael McGreevy. However, you're saving a little bit of money there. You're opening up that opportunity. So hopefully next year when you're trying to compete again, McGreevy is more prepared for that long season. Somebody else brought up the idea of going to a 6-man rotation. I just don't think it makes sense. When you look at the way that those work, you've got to have, it puts so much strain on your bullpen. And that's when you have to have that ability to churn. And the Cardinals just have too many guaranteed locked-in contracts that are in their bullpen, in my opinion, to make that work this season. I think you need more young guys in your bullpen to do that. So I don't know that this is the season for it. I would just stick with your 5-man rotation. And to me, I think you've got options as to how you can make this thing work. Did want to get to one other thing. Cardinals are playing against the Yankees today, and Nolan Arenado is in the lineup. Alex, this game is not being played in Jupiter. This is at the Yankees complex, which is right in the Tampa Bay area. That's why the Rays are going to be playing at their facility for the upcoming season. Nolan Arenado does not do this. He never travels with the team, certainly not to the other side of the state. I looked this up earlier today because I was curious. Okay, how often does Nolan Arenado go on road games? Here are the road games that Nolan Arenado has played in prior to the final 3 days of the spring, where he's really tuning up for the regular season. Since becoming a St. Louis Cardinal, road games as a Cardinal in spring training prior to the final 3 days. Miami, same stadium. Washington, 20-minute bus ride. Miami, same stadium. Miami, same stadium. Washington,
20 minutes.
Washington.
This makes sense.
New York Mets, 30 minutes. Houston, 30 minutes. Miami, same stadium. That's it. This is the first time since joining the St. Louis Cardinals that he's gone on this kind of a road trip in spring training. Now, I will find it interesting. If you want to put my tinfoil hat on, I can do this. Hey, the Yankees were on his list, right?
I was just going to say, who are they playing again, BK?
They were on his list. They're at their ballpark.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one tinfoil theory. I will be curious over the next week or so. I'll have to check out where their road games are over the next week, but I'd be curious to see if there are other road games that he goes to that are similar to this, where he's traveling across the state.
Yeah, I don't think Nolan Arenado is going to be looking at the schedule in the month of March and seeing the Cardinals taking on the New York Mets or the Toronto Blue Jays.
That's it.
And be like, oh, man, I should probably get out on the road so I can get out there and check that one out.
The only road game that they're doing that's like this.
Yeah.
So why did Arenado pick this one, huh?
It's like when it's like when you know your ex-girlfriend is going to be at the Starbucks up the street and you're like, you know what? I want coffee today at the same time she's going to be there, and I'm going to wear my sexiest vest.
I'm going to choose to believe that he did this because he just wants to get in the work.
That's cute.
And I do think if that is the case, and it might be, good for him, man. I do think there have been some signs that Arenado is looking in the mirror and saying, I wasn't good enough last year. Part of why I'm in this situation right now is because the Yankees and Dodgers don't want me at my current contract. And that's a tough pill to swallow, man. When you're a future Hall of Famer, the way that Arenado is, and for your entire career, you've been able to write in pen, regardless of what the other numbers look like, 30 and 100, 30 and 100. Every single season of his career, 30 homers, 100 ribbies. That's what you can write in pen for Arenado. And last year was like half of that for him. So I do think there might be a chance that he's just looking at himself and saying, man, anytime I can get work in, I'm going to go get it done, even if that means a 3-hour bus ride up to the New York Yankees complex today.
I'm glad you're optimistic about it, man. I'm rooting for Nolan Arenado as well, but when I saw who the opponent was and I said, this makes a lot of sense. I get Mason Wynn pushing to be in the lineup. I get Brendan Donovan pushing in to be the lineup. Look, more reps are better for young guys.
I'm going to say it was the same bus ride to Toronto, and I did not see him there.
Yeah, you got to go to one of them.
Do you?
And which
I don't
one
think you
would
do
make
when you're a veteran?
And which one would make the most sense?
I'll have to look through. I think everybody went on one of these two trips.
And
It's
which
interesting
one
though
would
why he
make
didn't
the
go to
most
Toronto.
sense?
You know?
Made
you
more
ra-
sense to go today.
Nolan, which one you want to go to?
Now,
Yankees?
why would that be, Brandon?
Yankees or the Blue Jays? Wait, who's on my list again? Oh,
Well, they had Gorman and Sajaci in the lineup yesterday.
yeah, no, those
You
guys.
can move those guys, I promise. So, JC, they can move.
I just love how BK's denying the conspiracy theory that's in front of him right
Even
now.
though he came up with it.
Yeah, well, you know. Yesterday they had those guys. Sajaci's in the lineup again today as a DH. Arenado wanted to be there. He wanted to get into the work.
Now, why wouldn't Nolan Arenado want to play DH?
Yeah.
Well, because he needs to get a...
He needs work at the third base position?
Now you're being absurd. Coming up next, the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN.
T-Bone was at the Blues game last night, and afterwards he said, you know what I could go for right now? Some Ted Drew's famous frozen custard, and why wouldn't he? It's right there off of Chippewa. Perfect opportunity for you to go get that famous frozen custard that is a St. Louis tradition and has been since 1929. A year-round tradition. Yes, it's still a little cold outside. That doesn't matter, though. That frozen custard is going to hit the spot no matter what. Whatever flavor you're looking for, whatever mix and match you want, Ted Drew's has that for you. It's got the consistency. It's got the tradition. When you visit Ted Drew's, you're not just enjoying that frozen custard. You're experiencing a piece of St. Louis history. And you build those family traditions. Friends, you see them all getting together, sitting out in the parking lot next to their car, talking, having a great time. That's the stuff that you get to build with your family and friends. And while you go to Ted Drew's, walk across the parking lot and check out their gift shop that's got Ted Drew's apparel, kids and hats. They've got, or kids and adults, they've got hats, they've got drinkware, they've got gift cards that you can buy. The perfect place to go when you need to get a gift for somebody that you don't know what to get them. So get on out there today, build those family traditions. It's Ted Drew's famous frozen custard. It really is good, guys and gals.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Cardinals are jet lagged as they are at the Yankees spring training site.
I just love it because it's coming from the guy that anytime somebody complains about travel schedule.
Yeah, it's tough. They had to go 3 hours to the other side of the state in Florida, and their offense is struggling. It's suffering as a result.
Gilligan's Island told us what
today.
3-hour tours turn into.
They do not have yet a hit. Will Warren also is a really good pitcher, really good young pitcher. 3 innings, 4 strikeouts for the Yankees today. It's tough, man. Sometimes you go up against ace, and what are you supposed to do? You tip your cap.
The
and
Yankees,
say, Jacob deGrom over there. Will Warren, same thing.
The Yankees were saying the same thing when Tin Kens took them out. And they're like, oh, well, you go up against an ace, you get 6 hits off of them.
No, they said that whenever Michael McGreevy was on the mound. All right, Alex, let's dive into the junk drawer today.
And the Cardinals said he's destined for Memphis.
We talked about planes the other day. Feel like we should probably do so again today.
Why?
Oh, boy.
What happened, man?
Tanner loves when I bring up something that could be maybe possibly seen as being a political conversation.
Well, none of us.
This is very much not that. A married couple said they were forced to sit next to a dead woman's body for 4 hours on a flight from Australia to Qatar.
What?
Oh, got you interested, huh?
Why?
Well, this one's not
Why
politics.
is there a dead body on an airplane?
Mitchell Ring and Jennifer Collin were on Qatar Airways flight from Melbourne to Doha, the Qatari capital, last week. About 10 hours into the flight, a woman exited the restroom, collapsed, and died in front of them. The couple told Australian news program A Current Affair this on Sunday. Quote, they did everything they possibly could, but unfortunately, the lady couldn't be saved, which is pretty heartbreaking to watch. The flight crew then put the woman's body in an empty seat next to the couple for the remaining 4 hours of the flight.
Now, here's a question, a follow-up question. Were they sitting middle seat and window, or were they sitting aisle and middle, and then they said, hey, we need to put this body in the window seat?
Either way. There is no good answer on this.
Yeah,
Like when somebody dies on a flight.
Yeah, but you can't put him in a seat next to somebody.
Luck.
You drag him to the back of the cabin and you put a blanket over him until you land.
I kind of feel the same way. Like you can't Weekend at Bernie's them.
Put sunglasses on it.
Just chilling.
Honey, what do you think of the flight? I love it so much.
Like, what are we doing here, man?
That's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
This was
creepy.
one stop on their trip, by the way. They were then going to be going to Venice, Italy.
Do you sit in that seat the entire flight, or do you just stand up and say no way? I'll stand the rest of the
I'm
flight.
definitely not sitting next to the dead woman next to me. Like I'm
stand.
sorry. I also expect. Like, I will expect, I'm not this guy, generally speaking. You guys know how much of a pushover I am. Like, if somebody brings me the wrong food at a dinner place,
Somebody brings him a
it.
dead body, he's going to sit next to it.
No, like, this is a situation where I am going to the airline and saying, hey, I expect to get money back for this flight. I'm not paying for what we just witnessed on that flight.
Money back? I need a lifetime supply of flights because I'm not sitting next to a dead body for the rest of this flight.
And if I don't get anything, I'm doing what these people did, which is go to the media. And I'm talking to whoever needs to hear it because I'm getting what's mine. Mm-hmm. This is ridiculous. I'm not sitting next to a dead woman for 4 hours on a flight.
Yeah,
if I am, I'm getting something out of it.
I don't understand, like, when the body didn't collapse, you just dragged it to the back part of the cabin, you put a blanket over it or something, and you just say, close the curtain and forget about it until you land. You don't look at it and say, you know what's the smartest move we can do? We set this body up.
Nobody's using this, right?
Yeah, we lift it, and we put the body in a chair.
Somebody said, you got to order some extra drinks for that seat.
What if they were sitting like aisle
What if they
and
did
window?
what happened to me when I flew to Vegas, which was I sat in the middle seat in a 3-row, right? I sat in the middle seat, and there was a girl to my right, guy to my left. I didn't think they knew each other at all. As we're getting our bags, I then come to realize they are married, but they didn't sit next to each other.
That's a
They
jerk
had
move.
somebody like me sit in the middle.
Why wouldn't you
Imagine
tell them,
them
"Do you want
putting
me
the
to
body
move?"
in the middle there. No, like I said, is anybody in this seat? And they said no. They sat there like that.
T-Bone's the guy that
And it
says,
was a
my
sold
seat
plane.
says 12B.
As married people, I have no problem with that.
You don't want to sit next to your wife on the plane?
I would prefer to sit in the aisle. And if she wants to sit on the window, if it's a long flight and she wants to sit on the window because she wants to lean her head next to it, sure. It's not a problem. I typically do sit next to my wife.
There's
felt
no
kind of
way in hell
uncomfortable.
I'm going to have somebody sitting between me and my wife on a plane.
Why?
It felt kind of
That's
uncomfortable.
weird.
Yeah, it felt
If
weird.
one of you is sleeping, if one of you is
So I'm going
planning
to put
to
my
sleep,
head on the person next to me's shoulder?
No, I'm saying like do you like the window or the aisle?
I don't really care, to be honest
Does your
with
wife like the window or the aisle?
you. She doesn't care.
Okay, if your wife likes the,
Do you like
let's
the middle
say she
seat?
likes the window.
Sure, I don't care, man.
Nobody likes the middle. My wife likes the window seat. If she is going to lean her head up against the window while she's sleeping, and she's planning to sleep the whole flight, it's not a problem if I sleep in the
But then
aisle,
I'm going to
or if I
sit in the middle.
aisle.
I'm not going to take a chance of having some stranger
I'm
sit
sitting on
next
it.
to me.
The funny thing was on that flight, I didn't have like long conversations with him. Like every now and then, like she'd say something and we'd talk for a second, then he'd say something and talk for a second. I truly
It's
thought
not
they
weird
had
to
no
sit in
idea that they
different
knew.
sides.
No, I'm not saying that. It's weird if there's a person that's going to sit in between you. If somebody comes and says somebody's sitting there, I'm going to say, no, let me move. That's my wife. I'm going to scoot over. You could sit in the aisle seat.
Why?
Because I'm not going to sit by some stranger when my wife is on the plane
Why'd
with
you
me.
point at me like I was a bad thing?
Well, no, you were fine, man. They told you to sit there. They're just a little strange.
I don't think
would
this
argue.
is weird at all.
You know, it would be weird if you took the dead
didn't-
person's
they
legs
won't
and
walk-
started kicking the seat.
Were they talking to each other a lot on the plane?
No, they didn't talk at all. Like I had
There's
no
marital
idea.
problems
No,
probably there.
I think that's probably a situation where they're both like, hey, you sit over there, I'm going to sit over here.
Seen
We're
you for
gonna be-
21
yeah.
years. We don't need to talk.
Also, we're going to be on vacation together the entire
Maybe
time.
I'm the weird one that likes to talk to his wife.
Do you talk on the plane?
Yes.
On the plane?
Yeah.
I almost never talk on a plane.
Oh, really?
Typically, I'll watch something, read something. Yeah, like, what am I talking
If I was
about?
with family, I would talk with
Well,
them.
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna
the thing
talk-
was, is like we were at the
You
back
don't
end of
watch
getting
or
on the
read
plane.
anything?
Well, that time
If she
I did.
falls asleep,
But,
I
like, if
will.
I
But
was-
like, if it's a quick flight,
Like
I'm going to talk
we flew back together. Like we sat
typically
together on the
watch
flight
something
back,
together.
and we like
together.
talked for a while, and then we started doing our own thing.
Yeah, but if there's a guy sitting in between you, you're going to have him hold the phone.
No, we can watch something separate then. That's fine. I don't think this is a problem at all.
This
Hey,
is
you
so
wanna,
weird.
Hey, you want to watch this movie with us? But you
Yeah.
got to hold the phone.
Yeah,
okay?
you gotta be the phone guy.
kind of a.
That's where the body comes into play. You prop the arms up on the table and you have her hold the film.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up at 1:30, we'll talk to our friend Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues. But next, is this the chance for the Blues to give Benner that extended run that they've been holding off for most of the season? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN. All right, Alex, apparently I am the weird one. I put this up on Twitter, at BK Sports Talk. Is it weird for a married couple to sit in the aisle and window on a flight while the stranger sits in the middle seat? So far, obviously small sample size, just put the poll up a little bit ago, but we're 45 votes in, and 85% of the people say yes, that's a strange thing to do.
Yeah, because the people that are doing this either are weirdos, BK, or dislike their significant other.
And that's not the case for me. I actually do love my wife very much.
You did hold a finger up to her when you were watching a Royals playoff game.
Yeah, I did say. I said, excuse me, this is a big moment. Not in those exact words, but I said.
I think you said that a little more rude.
Yeah, I told her this is the biggest moment of the season. Can you please quiet down for a minute?
And then she didn't speak to you for the next 24 hours, and you had to apologize.
That's correct. So the Blues are going to be speaking terms right now with Jordan Binnington, but they have not really pushed him much this year, Alex. Mostly it's been 2 for Benner, 1 for Hofer. And they've gone about that especially throughout the Jim Montgomery era. We've not seen a whole lot of pushing Benner other than basically the Winter Classic game. That was the one opportunity where they did the 3 and then 1. Benner has played in the last 2 games. The Blues, the way that things set up for the schedule, they've got a back-to-back Saturday and Sunday. So you're going to get one of those games going to be Hofer. The other one is going to be Jordan Binnington. This is a rare scenario where, Alex, I actually think it makes sense for them to go back to Binnington tomorrow night. He's your best dude. He's playing some great hockey right now. He's been on top of his game over the last couple that he's played, and he's coming off of a huge event with the Four Nations face-off. He is locked in right now. I want him going up against Washington. And then what I would do, Alex, is I would go with Hofer against L.A. on Saturday, and then come back to Binnington on Sunday, and then Binnington again on Wednesday. This is the time where you're in let's push mode, especially prior to that NHL Trade Deadline, which is next Friday. Those are the only 4 games you're going to be playing prior to the deadline. So I would go in 3 of those with Jordan Binnington. Tomorrow night, Sunday against Dallas, and then Wednesday at LA. How would you approach this if you were Jim Montgomery?
I would do that as well. I'm going with my best guy in the games that I need to pick up points in. And look, you got the opportunity to win 3 in a row. Now, earlier this season, Washington put 8 up on you, and Jordan Binnington suffered all 8 of those when he played. So past would say that they're going to be like, no, let's give Joel Hofer a look at the Washington Capitals. He's played against them before, and he picked up the victory, and it's the 2-1 split. But, man, right now, if I'm Jim Montgomery, I'm desperate for points, and I'm desperate to keep the good things going for my team. Binnington is tracking the puck as best as I have seen him this season. He's confident. I know you're worried about reps because, obviously, he played 4 extra games while the rest of the team was off, but now's the time to run it. You've also got a lot of back-to-backs coming up, so it's going to be Binnington and Hofer. I think this is the perfect time to let Binnington play against Washington, Hofer plays against the LA Kings, and then Benner gets the game against the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I think, and then I would start Benner that following game against the LA Kings. Yeah. So I think you go
3 out of the next 4, it's Benner.
Yeah, I think time, so. Man. Because now is that final push. I mean, we talked about they're a game-by-game basis right now for a team. I mean, they're one bad game away from definitely being determined as sellers. So now is the time to really push in this last potential surge to say, hey, whether it is adding or it is, hey, just hold pat for us, Army. We think we can do this. You got to go with your best guy. And, like, I agree with Alex. I think this is the best Binnington's look this season while playing with the blue note on his chest, with not putting in the Four Nations tournament where he was excellent.
Yeah. And then from there, it's basically 2 out of 3 again, because you've got Friday, Saturday, back-to-back. You've got Anaheim and L.A. Well, I'll probably go Hofer against Anaheim, and then I'll go back to Binnington against L.A. That's crazy. 3 games against L.A. in a 1-week stretch.
Yeah, they play them 3 times in 7 days. They play 5 games in 8 days. It's a redonkulous schedule coming up.
But anyways, and then they're off for a little bit. You go back to Pittsburgh. I'll play him there. I'll probably play Hofer against Minnesota, and then I'll come back on Sunday, and boom, it's Binnington. So, like, you can make this work from there. This is the game that feels like the pivot point, potentially, for them. And I personally think they should go back to Jordan Binnington, and these games will determine, Alex, what they decide to do at the trade deadline. Yesterday, we talked about Casey Middlestat, really as a jumping-off point more so than you got to get Casey Middlestat. He is a potential buy low candidate that could be available this year at the deadline. When we talked about it, you said, man, I'd like to look into who those other players are out there, because even if Middlestat is not your cup of tea, I'm sure there's other teams that are interested in some of what you have to offer. Maybe you could go improve yourself in another way. So it felt like a potential Ferrario Five opportunity.
Yeah, you knew it.
Alex, what do you have for us?
All right. I haven't said this in a while, since in the preseason when I actually nailed 2 of them, but we'll talk about that at the end of the year. T-Bone hit my open.
You're listening to BK and Ferrario. It's time for the Ferrario Five, a top 5 list of very random things. So, Ferrario, give us your top 5.
All right, there's one guy on here that people are probably going to be mad about, but I have a reason why he's not on here. There's no Trent Frederick on this list. One, I don't think it's a buy low candidate, and two, I don't even think the Blues are going to entertain it because you're going to have to give up an asset for a player in competing conversations with other contending teams. And if you're the Blues, you think, I'm going to take my shot at him via free agency when he's a free agent. So I didn't put him on this list. One honorable mention for you, San Jose Sharks. There's a dude named Nico Sturm. He's like 6'4", really good third line.
Him in the offseason.
Really good third line centerman, plays physical. He's one that I had an eye on, but not in my top 5. Number 5, boys. Let's take a trip down to Tennessee and give our friend Ryan O'Reilly a call.
Okay. I like it.
The Nashville Predators, Barry Trotz yesterday on the team's flagship station said, look, we're going to be embracing this retool. And if nobody wants to be here beyond it, then fine, we'll talk about trades. Now, of course, the rumors are out there that he wants that he's going to treat everybody like they've got a no movement clause. 2x4.5 for Ryan O'Reilly is a perfectly suitable contract for a third-line center. That is an upgrade over Oscar Sundqvist. And frankly, if I'm the Nashville Predators, I don't think that's going to cost a lot to trade Ryan O'Reilly. I get younger, probably give him a depth centerman and a draft pick. I think you could make that deal work, and it's really good for the Blues in terms of this year and then next year when you've got Dalibor Dvorsky on this team.
I'd be fine with it. It's not something that gets me super excited because I don't think there's any kind of longevity there. But if you're just trying to make the playoffs this year, you want to be a quick contender, Ryan O'Reilly's the kind of guy that can do that for you. I do think at this point in his career, he is probably a second or third line center. I've got no problem with this. It's not something that gets me overly excited because of his age, but yeah, I think it'd be a fine move.
You can flip him again in the offseason, right? Because he technically has no protection, no trade, no movement.
Yeah, and I think he's what Tyler Bozak was at the end of his career in St. Louis, where he could play third or fourth line for you, and you're fine with it. If you don't like that one, let's go to another Central Division opponent, the Chicago Blackhawks. They're bad. We all agree on that one.
Bedard.
No, not Bedard. That'd be great, though. They've got a 28-year-old centerman named Ryan Donato. He's got 19 goals this season in 56 games. Career about 45% from the faceoff dot. Played for Seattle, played for Minnesota. This guy loves to play physical. And I think the idea of the Trent Frederick thing, you can't get Trent Frederick now. This one I think is probably easily attainable. And he's a UFA after this season. It is a clean wash after this year. If he's good, you reconsider it because he's in the age frame. If he's not, you probably gave up a 5th or a 6th round pick for somebody like this.
I don't mind it. He probably upgrades from where you're at. He definitely has more scoring punch than what you're currently getting.
Absolutely. He's got a really good shot.
Your middle 6 center position. So, yeah, I'd be cool with this.
Yeah, power play guy that could play there, kind of like Oscar Sundqvist has been doing as well. He's a bigger guy, and he provides some speed, so it would make sense with this one. Number 3 on this list, the Boston Bruins. We got a 28-year-old centerman named Pavel Zacha. 2 years remaining on his contract at $4.75 million. Now, you'd say, why would they trade that guy away? Well, it's because Brad Marchand's a free agent, and I think Boston's starting to understand where they're at to where they need to get younger with pieces rather than try and continue to run it back with the roster that they have. This might cost you a little bit more, might cost you one of your prospects, not a Snuggerud or Dvorsky or a Bolduc, but that next tier down. Here's why I'm interested in this, though. His last 2 years when he played with Boston, when Jim Montgomery was there, he's a 20 to 25 goal scorer, very good in the faceoff dot. He basically could be a second-line center for you, but you're even better having him on the third line, and he can also play wing and be a versatile centerman for you.
Yeah, my understanding, not good defensively. That's part of the problem with him.
Was with Jim Montgomery, though, or at least a better.
Not good, but better. He's a guy that I'd be interested in. You said it's 1 more year at 4 points.
He's 2 more years at 4.75, so very similar.
After this year, this is year 1 of his contract.
Yeah, so very similar to Ryan O'Reilly's contract.
It's not about the player so much as it is the contract. If I lock myself into that and he's not good, now what? Because now you've got a roster spot that's taken up by Pavel Zacha. So if it was a 1 or 2 year deal, I'd definitely be interested. 3 kind of throws me off a little bit.
Yeah.
That's where I'm coming from on this one.
Yeah, well, and totally understandable. That is his kind of biggest bugaboo with it. But to me, I looked at that as a perfect third-line center. And when Dvorsky's ready, you shift this player over to the wing, and he's got a little scoring punch for you.
I think that one, to me, depends on what I'm planning to do with Shin.
Yeah. Which could be guy goes in, guy comes out.
Yep.
You move on from that one. All right, number 2 on this list, very excited about it. I don't know if Pittsburgh would do this, but because he's an RFA after this season, and then he's only got 1 year of RFA, and then he's a UFA, he's 25 years old, he's Cody Glass. I don't know if people remember this guy. He was drafted 6th overall by the Vegas Golden Knights in 2017. He's not very good offensively right now with Pittsburgh. But, I mean, let's look at Pittsburgh also, ladies and gentlemen. They're not a very good team. Look at Nashville, though. He had 14 goals and 35 points in 72 games and was kind of like a third or a fourth-line centerman. Here's the reason why I'm most intrigued by this. One, it's the size. He's 6'3", 201 pounds. 2, look over at the Washington Capitals. They traded for Dylan Strome, who had been on 2 separate teams, who was drafted 3rd overall, and he never lived up to his potential. And Washington said, we could get the most out of this guy. The moment he stepped into Washington, 23 goals and 65 points. The next year, 27 goals and 67 points. And then this year, he's got 59 points in 58 games.
I think the difference, though, Strome had a 20-goal, 57-point season, and we've never seen anything approaching
But it was
that.
on Chicago when they were bad, and he was a top-line center for that team.
Cody Glass this year is on a bad team, and he's so bad that he can't even get into the top 6.
Well, I mean, how are you going to crack the top 6 with Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin?
Yeah.
If you're a centerman, like you're destined for third line, and even in Nashville,
3 goals, man. He has 9 goals in his last 88 games.
Hey, man,
when I look at it, I see, why am I getting this when I've got Oscar Sundqvist?
you can like,
You want the size, you want that kind of production.
He fits buy low, baby.
Well, yeah, that was the whole point of this. Buy low, and he's young. He's 25 years old, and I look at that one season in Nashville when he played almost 15 minutes a game. He had 14 goals in 72 games and was a +9.
You know what this is to me? This is a Radek Faksa replacement. If you're not re-signing Radek Faksa this offseason, which is in play, they might not. This is a younger version of what Faksa is bringing to the table.
Oh, yeah. See, I think this guy's got more upside, and that's why it's a buy low where it's like, hey, he might not pan out, but you know what? He's an RFA after this year, and if he doesn't pan out, then you let him walk into be a UFA.
I thought Faksa coming into the season could be your third-line center, and that's why I bring this up, because, hey, if next year you decide Dvorsky not ready to go for the full season, whatever, you can play him capably as a third-line center. I don't hate the idea. I don't think it has a ton of upside, in my opinion, but I don't hate it. I would be more in on this than I am on who was the last one that we went through? Not Donato, but number 3 on the list. Zacha.
Yeah. Number 1 on this list, go to the Seattle Kraken. They played against them last night. Jared McCann. Guy scored 40 goals 2 years ago. Now, he typically plays the wing with the Seattle Kraken, but he is a natural centerman, played it before he was in Seattle. I am so infatuated with this idea because Seattle's going the opposite direction. They need younger players. They need assets. Jared McCann's a free agent in 2 years. He's 28 years old. They're using him on the third line because Shane Wright has gotten to be a better player who's moved into the top 6.
And they're going young.
Yeah, I don't know what it would take for this. This might be like a Zach Bolduc or something like that. But this to me,
this is what I want.
This to me is the perfect placeholder for Dalibor Dvorsky because the rest of this season and next season, he is your third line center. And when Dvorsky is ready to take over, you shift Jared McCann to the wing and know that this guy can score 40 goals for you.
That's my move.
Yep.
That's a great one.
Yep. This is the one that I like.
I don't know what the cost for the acquisition would be. What's his contract right now?
2.4 or 2.5 or 2 years left after this year at $5 million. So he's got $5 million on his contract.
That one sounds like a great move if Seattle's willing to do it.
Yeah.
And that's you got to have.
And this is where the cost
partner,
might be a little like this isn't Dvorsky, this isn't Snuggerud, so you don't have to worry about that. But is this a Stenberg? Is this another depth centerman that you have? Is this your first round draft pick? Probably not. That's a lot. But maybe next year's second round draft pick. But this is a move that you say it's going to help us get to the playoffs this year. And it's going to make us a playoff contender and give us that depth for the next 2 years.
Those are Alex Ferrario's top 5 buy low candidates for the Blues at the trade deadline. Jared McCann, Cody Glass, Pavel Zacha, Ryan Donato, and Ryan O'Reilly were the top 5. If you want to listen back to that, check it out on the podcast page after the show today. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Schaefer Door Company.
Coming up next, MLB.com put together their list of the most likely award winners for every team in Major League Baseball. You're going to want to hear who they had for the St. Louis Cardinals in 2025. We'll tell you next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. So, Alex, I always go to MLB.com prior to our show, just see, what's going on over there. What do they have available for us? Is there anything that we can use for content? And today they had a piece up with the most likely person from each team to win an award in 2025. So I was curious, okay, what's the answer for the Cardinals? Is it Sonny Gray to win Cy Young this year? Is it they're really high on Mason Wynn or Lars Nootbaar? Maybe they're in the MVP consideration. Maybe they think Quinn Matthews is going to have a breakout campaign and he could be the Rookie of the Year.
Do they get out a most gentlemanly award? Because that's probably where the Blues fall in, or the Cardinals fall into it.
Quote, when was the last time that the expectations were this low heading into the season for the Cardinals? The mid-90s pre-Maguire era. That's for sure. This is all for good reason. The Cardinals waved goodbye to Paul Goldschmidt, among others, and made no significant acquisitions. But they're still a talented team, especially with some of their young players. And if they get the long-awaited breakthrough seasons from the likes of Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman, the Cardinals could potentially contend in a division that isn't all that daunting. Ollie Marmol has been embattled during his Cardinals tenure, but with expectations so low, he has a chance to guide his team to a surprising playoff run and win this year's National League Manager of the Year.
No, that'll be after he's the Cardinals manager, as the trend typically goes.
Alex, if you had to put together
he didn't do it.
a piece similar to this, and you were saying, this is who I believe will be the Cardinal most likely to win an award this season, you would go with whom?
Is Gold Glove considered an award, or are we talking we're talking like title
award?
Okay, I would say MVP for Wilson Contreras. I can't invest in, look, I like Ollie. I can't invest in him being the manager of the year because that means I believe this team could be a playoff team. And for him to get manager of the year, I don't think that's you're a wild card team. I think that's you're a win the Central team. And I don't think that's going to happen. I do think Wilson Contreras can go out there and put 30-plus home runs up and have 100-plus RBIs and be one of the best batters at his position, especially if he stays healthy. So that would be mine.
I like that one. I do like the Ollie one because – I mean, if they do make the playoffs, there's going to be a real case for him to be getting consideration, especially coming off a year in which he exceeded expectations by keeping last year's team afloat above 500. I don't think they're that, though, so that's why I would hesitate on that one. I think I'm going to go with Gray for Cy Young. And I think it's because, you look at some of his advanced metrics from last season, and Sonny Gray's stuff was excellent. But yet the ERA was inflated somehow. It ended up becoming the finished year with a 3.84 ERA. He was still striking out 11 batters per 9 innings. His stuff was disgusting. He just had one or two blowups that really inflated that. I wouldn't be shocked if Gray gets back into the conversation to be a Cy Young pitcher. So I'll go with Sonny Gray for Cy Young.
Can I throw one more in here?
Please.
Arenado, comeback player of the year.
Do they?
I don't think they have
comeback player in the...
Yeah, they do. Chris Sale just won it last year with Atlanta.
There you go.
Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yep, Pujols got it with St. Louis in 2022.
There you go.
That would be another one for me. Now, it's not an MVP or manager of the year.
I also just hate the definition of that being a comeback player of the year when he was healthy all year and he just stunk.
Think of these are the guys that won it. Chris Sale, Cody Bellinger, Albert Pujols, Buster Posey the last 4 years. Pretty good name company, especially with all four of those guys did with their team. I do think Nolan Arenado could have a decent year.
I think it's Ollie. I think this is the correct answer. I know people will get mad at it because people don't like Ollie Marmol and they think he's a bad manager. But I think Ollie Marmol winning Manager of the Year is far more likely than any of their players winning MVP or winning Cy Young. I suppose comeback player of the year. I could see how somebody ends up getting that. Hell, I don't know if it necessarily applies, but you could even see somebody like Jordan Walker maybe being represented on something like that after what happened to him a year ago. I don't think that's the heart of what that award is supposed to be, but neither here nor there. I think Ollie Marmol, if this team goes into the season, and T-Bone said their floor is losing 100 games, and their over-under in Vegas, I think is 75.5, if I'm not mistaken.
Sounds right.
If the division is bad, the young players are better than we expect, and they win 88 games this year and make it into the postseason. That's the typical type of person that you could see winning National League Manager of the Year. The other thing, when you look across the National League this year, it just feels obvious as to who the good teams are going to be. Are we going to reward... I'm not telling you this should be the case, but this is typically how it goes. Are we going to reward Dave Roberts for managing that Dodgers team?
I mean, they tried it last year.
Are we going to award Mike Schilt for managing what is a really talented Padres team? The Diamondbacks, I think Torey Lovullo just won this award a couple of years ago as well, if I'm not mistaken. I just don't know who the manager is in the National League. Phillies, Braves, Mets, they're not going to get a manager that ends up winning this kind of award because those teams are incredibly talented. It's probably coming from the Central.
Yeah.
Whoever wins the NL Central this year is probably going to win Manager of the Year because that team will be considered a surprise relative to what their expectations this year were. So, if that team is the Cardinals and it doesn't take 95 wins to get it, I think Ollie Marmol is very much in play this year to win National League Manager of the Year.
I would put the Milwaukee manager, the Cubs manager, and the Reds manager before I'd put Ollie.
Yeah, because you think that they're better teams, right?
And I wouldn't put Milwaukee up there because didn't he win it last year?
Correct.
So that right there makes me think that he
The
probably
expectations are there. Yeah, no, it's a
I
good
don't
point.
know. I don't know if he'll be in that conversation. Granted, like
Pittsburgh or
Brewers
Cincinnati
are-
make the most sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fair argument that the 5 leaders in the clubhouse should be the 5 NL managers in the NL Central. Lavelle will probably get some of that just because the Diamondbacks missed the playoffs last year. Schilt potentially because they didn't really do much this offseason. Even Bob Melvin in San Fran, like they don't have much expectations. They had a big offseason.
Yeah.
They'll get it. But to me, it is the NL Central guys that are ones that will lead the way. And my fear is it's going to be like Terry Francona.
Sure.
Everybody keeps telling me it's like, hey, this Red team's better. Oh, this is the year they finally break out. And every year I keep going, well, wait a minute, I don't see it happening. And now you bring in a legit manager and Terry Francona. I could see him being the guy.
That's the other thing on Francona. He's new, right? He's
Yeah.
a new addition, so he doesn't have the stench of the 77-win 2024 Cincinnati Reds on him. They didn't make a ton of new moves. They made a couple, but they didn't make a ton of moves in the offseason. Their big move was adding in the manager. It would be like if last year the Cubs, if you flipped the Brewers and the Cubs last year, and the Cubs were the team that won 93 games, what would have been the rationale for that? Oh, well, look, they added Craig Counsell. He's clearly the secret sauce that makes everything work. He wins National League Manager of the Year as a result. Instead, it was the Brewers manager, Pat Murphy, who won the award. So I think you'll see the same thing in Cincinnati this year if they do what we just talked about with the Cardinals. They win 86, 88 games, get into either the wild card or win the division with fewer wins than you typically expect. Bada boom, bada bing. That's your Manager of the Year. I just think that exact same case applies to Ollie Marmol. They were terrible a year ago. He brings back a lot of the same group. He presses all the right buttons. We look back at it and we're like, man, he won 83 games while their expected win-loss record was like 72 wins last year. Maybe he's actually a pretty good manager. I certainly seem to think so. I know the entire audience disagrees with that. We'll
like
talk
the
to Chris Kerber about the St.
vote
Louis
for man
Blues
GM of the year.
coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Hey, Chris Kerber with you here, and I'm going to tell you a little story what happened when Classic Air Care came out to my house to maintain the unit. They took a thermometer and they put it inside the unit right where the heat leaves the unit. Then they took another thermometer, and they went all the way to one of the far vents, and they made sure that the temperature coming out and the temperature finally at the vent that's blowing the warm air into the room is the right variance. Dude, that is something I didn't know anything about. It was the coolest heck thing to see, but it meant that the right amount of air pressure and the right amount of flow is going through, and that it's maintaining the temperature. Those are little details that you may not know happen inside that HVAC unit that keep your house comfortable. We still have a little winter to go. Make sure that if you haven't had that checked, have it checked, because they could also right now do some of the spring tune-ups as well and make sure that you're ready to go as the weather starts to heat up. It's Classic Air Care. The kind of service I get is the kind of service you're going to get. Why? Because that's how they treat everybody. It's your neighbors that are coming in to do the work themselves, and their service is excellent. That's why they have a 4.8 Google rating, and you can read.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals in spring action as they're taking on the New York Yankees. They trail 6-0 heading into the top of the 7th inning. And the Blues will be back in action tomorrow night when they visit the Washington Capitals. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 5 o'clock with Alex Ferrario, then puck drop at 6 o'clock with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. CMLautof.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline via the Callier and Thompson hotline to be joined by the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. He was not able to be on the call last night for the Blues game as his father has passed, but we wanted to send our condolences to Kerber and his entire family. I know that was tough for you over the weekend, Kerbs. I did want to ask you before we get into the Blues, and we'll certainly talk about that. This is a sports show. We do that a lot, but I did want to talk to you a little bit about this. What did your father mean for your love of hockey, Kerbs? What did he bring to that element of your life?
Well, I will tell you probably, and I appreciate that, VK. I'll tell you, I think, not that I think, there's two things that when it came to kind of my broadcasting career and sports, and one was, when I was listening to Jack Buck call the World Series, I'll never forget in '85, and I looked at my dad and went, I could do that. And Dad looked at me and he goes, you can do anything you want. And I go, all right, well, I think I want to do that. And from that moment on, I knew I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. But he was like, you can do anything you want. The other thing is, at the same time, the early '80s between the Cardinals and the Mets were just kind of awesome, right? And at the same time, the Blues are starting to get back into it with relevance and things. And you were just watching games, and at one point in time, I was frustrated with the way the Cardinals were playing. I'm like, man, the Cardinals aren't all that great. The Blues right now aren't all that great. And Dad and I were talking about it. He looked at me, he goes, you really got to learn to just enjoy the sport for the sport, because you're not going to win all the time. You're not going to lose all the time, but you've got to be able to just sit down and enjoy a sport for what it is. And to me, that's one of the biggest life lessons. That's why I get passionate. I get fired up with things, right? But I also learned that I could sit down and watch a game, a basketball game, a football game, a Cardinal game, a Blues game, a City game, and I can actually just really enjoy the game, even if the game doesn't go that great. And that's because of him. It's a great lesson. Just learn to enjoy the sport.
I think it's something a lot of people could honestly stand to learn now. I think that it's become much more about not even necessarily enjoying the sport, but enjoying it, loving a team, and then finding ways to complain about the sport. It's changed a little bit in that regard.
Yeah. You know what? I'll tell you something too. Like, you know, like I'm not all that revved up or fired up about this season, you know, for the Cardinals or the Blues right now. I think the Blues have been honest with where they're at, right? And I know I'm excited to see some baseball, but I know where the Cardinals are. Man, if you just accept some of that stuff and you accept certain realities, you really do get to enjoy the sport. You can watch the fact that the Blues had a 7-0 lead last night. That lost on me, too, the day that we buried Dad, that they scored a total of 9 goals. There were 9 of us kids, and even the 2 goals against were from former Blues, right? Little weird stuff like that pops into your head. But, you know, you can enjoy those moments because the greatest thing about sports, guys, one, it's a break from reality. Should be, needs to be, is it's great entertainment. And unless somebody's like fixing it for whatever reason, like, you know, like the old Arizona State point shaving scandal, it's the best reality, you know, TV that's out there, or radio in this case. But the great thing about sports is on a given night, you never know what you're going to see. Blues scored 2 goals in a hurry, and you realize it's the 4th time, the 4th fastest 2 goals they've scored in their history. You know, you might see a defensive play you'd never thought you'd see. Things like that. That to me is the best part about sports.
Well, Kerbs, you mentioned it, those 7 goals that they scored, the 9 goals last night. You're talking about, or at least seeing, a confident group of players out of this Four Nations tournament that seemingly is hearing and understanding what Jim Montgomery is trying to convey to them, and they're implementing it on the ice.
Yeah, they are, and we're going to see now that the first hump was getting over, you know, playing a team like the Kraken after you just played 2 really strong games against Winnipeg and Colorado. Now the next test, you've got a team that, and I haven't looked at the standings today, they've overtaken Winnipeg, but right there for the top spot in the National Hockey League in Washington. You're going to come home, right? You've got another game against the LA Kings, who are in a battle for a Pacific Division title, followed by the Dallas Stars, followed by the Kings again. You know, and your only hope of a playoffs is you've got to pick up points, and not just 1 point. You got to get 2 points in a good chunk of these games. And we're about to find out if that message has really crossed over the river and this team's ready to run with it.
We're talking about it earlier today, Kerbs, and we're talking to Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues, here for just another minute here on 101 ESPN. I feel like you need probably points in 3 of these 4 games, and honestly, you probably need to get 2 points in 3 of these 4 games. Is that kind of how you're feeling like they need to approach it as well?
Yep, I think you got to find wins in basically 3 out of 4 games to give yourself a chance. So however you get them, you know, and what teams you get them against, does matter. But you're absolutely right. Somehow, and even if that means that it's 2 overtime losses versus 1 win, whatever it takes, yeah, you're still going to have to rack them up. Now, look, I mean, they picked up points in these 3 games, right? They put themselves back to within a decent range here. So we'll see how it plays out. But and listen, teams in transition, but they really have been in a good number of games, and they're giving themselves a chance. And right now, I'll go back to what we were just talking about. I don't know how it's going to work out. I do think, though, that there's enough reason and enough good players on this team for fans to be able to enjoy the ride.
And Curbs, final question that I've got for you. We talked about this as well earlier, the decision that they're going to have to make in net. They've got 3 games in the next 4 days. Thursday at Washington, and then Saturday, Sunday, the back-to-back with LA here, and then Dallas on the road. Over the weekend, that's pretty simple. You're going to go with one goalie in one game, the other goalie in the other game. What do you think they should do tomorrow night at Washington? Because I think there's at least a case to be made right now that that's a spot where you go back to Jordan Binnington. How do you feel about it?
Yeah. Oh, listen, I'm riding Jordan Binnington right to the end, guys. And that's not a statement on Joe Hofer. That's because Jordan Binnington is my starting goaltender, right? So I think you're coming right back with Jordan Binnington. Now, I don't know if they're going to do this or not. I wasn't at practice today. I know they just got on the plane to D.C., but, yeah, the Jordan Binnington in Washington, and then you decide whether or not you're going Hofer on Saturday and Binnington in Dallas on Sunday, or the other way around. And then you've got another set of back-to-backs coming up in Anaheim and in Los Angeles at the end of next week. So to me, Hofer starts 2 and Bennington is starting the rest unless something else falters.
Hey, Curbs, we appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much for hopping on with us today. Again, condolences to you and the family. We'll talk with you again soon. Enjoy that game. Hopefully it's a little distraction for you out there in Washington.
All right, guys. Have an awesome week. I appreciate the thoughts, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
That's Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues, joining us as he does each and every Wednesday here on BK and Ferrario. Alex, we talked about it with him a little bit. We'll talk about it certainly tomorrow as well. 4 games prior to the deadline, 2 against L.A., 1 against Dallas, and then the 1 tomorrow night against Washington. You starting Benner in 3?
Yeah, 3 of those 4 are Bennington. Yep. And depending on how it goes against Washington, if Benner looks locked in, and you pick up 2 points, I think I might start Benner again against the LA Kings. Like, if this guy looks locked in and says, I'm good to go, I'm taking, like, that's the guy that leads me to the playoffs. This is his time. Like, we can talk about him being a bad regular season goaltender all we want. Look at his career splits. From February on, this guy is locked in. And so if I want to be a playoff team, you know what gets me there? You know what makes me better than Utah? What makes me better than Vancouver? What makes me better than Calgary? Frankly, I mean, you're only 8 points behind the Colorado Avalanche. It's a lofty challenge, but you just beat them. You've got the better goaltender than all of those teams.
And the other thing, like, this is the time where you have this opportunity because you are going to have a bunch of back-to-backs. You mentioned it earlier today. Like, you have a back-to-back this weekend. Then you have a back-to-back Friday and Saturday of the next weekend. And then a back-to-back Saturday and Sunday on the next weekend. And then another one the following weekend. Like, these back-to-backs are relentless. The schedule the rest of the way is very condensed because of that Four Nations face-off break. It was worth it because we got to see some unbelievable hockey. But that's going to make decisions over the next couple of months, really next month or so, very easy for Jim Montgomery. You're going to go with one of those games in the back-to-back is going to be Hofer. The other one is going to be Bennington, and then Bennington starts the game that week. Boom, 2 out of 3. It's going to continue the way that it's been going previously. But for right now, this is one of those opportunities where you can push him a little bit. You get him in basically 5 out of these 6 games. That's an opportunity for you here. So we'll see what they decide to do. They have certainly tried to avoid this for most of the season, but this is seemingly the time to go ahead and push it.
And I think you avoided in the beginning of the season because of this stretch right here. And that's what I wonder if David Alexander's always looking at.
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll get the rewind next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, if you guys missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, or the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Schaefer Door Company.
That 101 ESPN app is free to download. It's super easy to use. You can always find our podcasts over there, and they are presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. You can check us out on YouTube as well, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. Basically, wherever you want to either watch or listen to our show, we're there for you.
We're everywhere.
So go ahead and check it out over there. I do want to pass this along because Ollie Marmol was asked about Paul Goldschmidt today, given the fact that the Cardinals are going up against Goldie and the Yankees. And I thought this was a great story to share, and it speaks to Goldie, who he is as a person. It kind of humanizes him a bit because I think at times Goldie can feel like a bit of a robot for those that are looking from the outside looking in. And I thought Ollie shared a really great story about something that Goldie did for Ollie and his family. So this was is from John Denton, who relayed this story on Twitter just a little bit ago, Alex. Said, I'll tell you something about how thoughtful Paul Goldschmidt is. There are guys that care, and then there are guys that have an elite awareness of things around them and will look for opportunities to do things for people. Ollie then continued, I had my first kid, my daughter. She's 7 now. Goldie had just come on the team, and I think my youngest, Kylie, had just been born. Goldie knew that we were going to be on the road for the month during spring training, and my wife was going to have to be home quite a bit by herself with a newborn and a 2-year-old at the time. And in order to alleviate some of that work for all of us to be focused on what we were trying to do on the field, I get into the clubhouse one day and Goldie comes up to me and says, hey, it's already paid for. I've already taken care of it. You have a night nurse coming to your house every day of the week for the next month. Your wife doesn't have to worry about anything. It's already taken care of. Ollie then continued, I was the first base coach, maybe the bench coach at the time. Those are the types of things where his awareness level of things, he would do stuff like that constantly, and nobody would ever know it about him. He's constantly looking for opportunities to make sure that people are taken care of around him, and you just don't see that very often. That is the kind of story that speaks to character. It's one thing to be a guy that is the rah-rah leader of a team, but you always heard about Goldie's leadership around the club and the things that he would do to make those around him better. This is another part of leadership. When you are a guy that just sees stuff around you and you take care of your people, that is something that will always, always endear you to those around you. I wish I was better at this stuff. Goldie, just a world-class human. I thought that was a great story, and I'm glad Ollie shared it today.
It humanizes sports. It's what Kerbs was just telling us. Sometimes you got to step away from it and just enjoy it rather than get so frustrated and worked up when a guy's not hitting for a month. It does provide you a human element of looking at these guys and realizing that they're all not robots. They're all not just professional athletes that make millions of dollars. They're people, and it goes to show you the really good ones around teams that you've got and how much you should appreciate them. And man, I like reading that. I got choked up because like I know what your family feels like when you have newborns, and then on top of it when you're leaving for a month. So it does humanize the game. It humanizes the athletes, and I think it makes you appreciate those guys so much more.
Somebody else on the text line said, "Guys, Matt Holliday was another one of those guys. 100%.
Carpenter was that guy too.
Had a lot of them. Wayno, Holliday." Goldie, Carpenter, yeah. They've had some really good dudes go through that locker room. Alex Steen was this way.
Yeah, Braden Shen is this guy.
Like the St. Louis community has been really fortunate with a lot of athletes that fit into this criteria, and you don't hear a ton about it because typically the guys that are willing to do this, that go the extra mile, also don't want to talk about it. Like,
they want to keep it. Yeah.
They just want that between them and the person that they're trying to help out, and they do it because they're trying to help people around them. So kudos to Paul Goldschmidt. Thanks to Ollie Marmol for sharing that story earlier today with reporters as well. Typically, we would have gone back through, our Blues takes from the day, Cardinals conversations, whatever. You can check those out on the podcast page. We'll certainly be talking plenty of Blues tomorrow as well, leading into that game against the Washington Capitals. For Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We will talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.